2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world. Lay the puzzle pieces out. Find out what it's all about. Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Sail past where it's been charted. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. With our hands and with our hearts, we can dare to make a start. Together we can change the world. What if we spoke with one voice, knowing that we have a choice? Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Sail past where it's been started. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. Change your mind and change your life. Set aside the fear and strife. Together we can change the world. When we open up our eyes and we start to realize, together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Sail past where it's been charted. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Sail past where it's been charted. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world.
All educators, caregivers, peers, and the esteemed members at this momentous event. I'm delighted to welcome you to the ISEY 2020. We've come together on this platform today bound by one thread, our deep commitment to the well-being of children. At KLAY, the well-being of children is the core of our existence. It has been for the last 9 years since our visionary founder, Priya Krishnan, brought a dream to life, and it will remain that for the next 90 years to come. This is without a doubt a unique time for bringing up children. On one hand, we have the opportunity to be spending quality time with them. We've seen an explosion of mobile and digital technology that enables them in evolving skills, firing up their imagination and curiosity. Most certainly, there have been multiple modes available that were beyond my wildest imagination in my childhood. On the other hand, we're seeing them confined and with some of their basic rights under threat. Such times call for the coming together of policymakers, educators, thought leaders to build a better tomorrow for children. We started this conference last year with a theme of happy adults is equal to happy children. This year, in keeping with the uncertainty that surrounds the world we live in, our theme is when the world unites for children. In times such as this, it becomes even more imperative that we ensure the physical, emotional, and psychological well being of our little ones. And looking at the number of registrants at this event and the truly august list of speakers and panelists, I think we can safely say that this theme resonates as the top priority the world over. So here we are, happy and humble to be leading this conversation on behalf of the entire industry. Your host for this evening shall be Meghna Yadav, a renowned expert herself in child development. Her expertise has helped thousands of parents through her Parent Academy and through the Read and Reflect programs. She has helped not just parents, but also blue chip corporates in India and across the globe. I now leave you, audience members, in the company of experts who will change the very thought process on early childhood and care. But before I do that, I'm proud to declare ISEY 2020 open. Over to you, Meghna.
Thanks very much, AK, for this kind introduction. I feel honored, I feel humble at this moment that we are taking this a step forward and doing our little bit in this tough time across globe. No better time than this to bring the world together. And it is so wonderful that we are do very little, but we are attempting this confidence. Thank you so much for introducing me with your kind words. Friends, on behalf of KLAY Preschools and Daycare, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you and many thanks coming your way from the bottom of our hearts for joining in. This is a revolution happening because we are really bringing the world together, and you sitting here joining this place talks volumes about your involvement, your commitment, your dedication in the field of early childhood education and development. Friends, we, as the theme says, and AK has described it in depth for each one of you, we are uniting today because this is the need of the hour. This is a little step, but a very sincere step in the direction for hope, for commitment, for devotion to make the lives of children better and change according to their needs. Those of you who must have joined in the beginning, the very theme, together we can change the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world. So, friends, let's join now before it's too late, because this is the time where we all contribute significantly. The efforts need to be consciously enough done so that we can see the change on the ground. The philosophy here is to bring the various links of the chain at one platform and bring the right kind of direction for every single stakeholder, be it parent, be it teachers working on ground for most of the active hours with children, be it caregivers, or in any form you are attached or working for children. So please use the coming few hours as much as possible. In this humble attempt of us, we have the expert of this philosophy right among us. And I feel really privileged to share this platform with Meeta Sengupta, the first keynote speaker of the evening today. Meeta Sengupta works at the cusp of policy and practice across education and skill spectrum, designing education processes to realize the potential of individual students is at the center of our education philosophy. I can go on and on introducing Meeta. I would really take a lot of time if I talk the rich experience that Meeta comes with. But over to you, Meeta. I feel really, really privileged to have you here and look forward to hear your knowledge nuggets.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Srikant, for starting the conference. Thank you, Clay, for making this happen. And Meghna, you are wonderful as ever. You said a few words that are so dear to my heart. You said students. You didn't just say children, you said students. That is so critical. You also spoke of confluence. Confluence is absolutely critical to what we are discussing right now. So thank you very much for bringing that right up front, right into the introduction. And I promise you, I will not keep all my promises because that is the nature of working with children.
Oh,
The
yeah,
nature of
totally.
working with children, absolutely, we follow children. And I
So
think
true.
I think a lot of what I want to talk about today, we had a very fancy title to the keynote, and I truly believe in that. And we called it Enabling Adjacent Mindsets, a shift to and a pivot and purpose. And I think as I begin to ponder on that, I realize that this is always and will always be an act of the follower leader. We may think that we are in the business of leading children, but really, our job is to be followers. And we lead them by being very, very faithful followers. Because it's only by following them we actually understand what they need, we understand who they are, we understand where they can go, and we understand our limitations in understanding where they can go, which is a fairly complex concept for most of us because in our past we have come from a fairly stable, we have been a very stable generation. We have not faced war, we have not faced pestilence. The worst thing we saw in the 1970s was the oil shock. For those of us who are for you, Meghna, who is significantly younger, your life has been peaceful so far, as that of your generation. But the children today are stuck in the middle of the pandemic. Srikant spoke of this. So tell me when I can start, Meghna, because I think I've already
Please,
started.
please go ahead. We are waiting to hear from you and we would love to take our notes. I would request the audience to keep taking notes. These are the valuable sessions, won't come back to you. Time will never repeat itself again. So use the opportunity. Over to you, Meeta.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be talking to all of you over here. I am deeply grateful because there is nothing more enabling, nothing more enchanting, nothing more delightful than talking to people who care about students. I spoke about followership, but followership can only come from a sense of care. And a sense of care so intense. This is why we gather here. Because for us, it becomes a mission. We are, in a way, in mission mode to say, here is a bunch of little children. I mean, I dislike the terminology little flowers, but you look at them so tender, so full of potential, and you know that they will be able to make it without us. But with us, how much better can it be? How much better can we make it for our students? And I'm going to take a moment to even remind ourselves of the previous generation. Our parents' generation used to say to us, I am going to make my child into a doctor. Often in gendered situations, we would hear things like, I will make my son an engineer and I will make my daughter a doctor. And this make is something that would always jar. It never made any sense to me because who are we to make somebody into something, firstly? Who are we to decide their potential? Now, I can understand where it comes from. It comes from economic need. It comes from a need for security. It comes from a generation that had seen so much upheaval. They had seen the depression after the First World War from their parents' generation. They had seen wars. They had seen, if in the Indian context, the battle for independence. They had seen so much upheaval, the partition in the Indian context. Seeking security was important to them. Look at us now again, sitting right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. Seeking security is what will come naturally to us. But we do not need to necessarily give in to the fears because we have also seen better and we also know better now that it is possible to create a safer world for our children, which gives them potential. Because if we want to make them into a doctor engineer, then it is to actually go by the name of our wonderful hosts here, we are talking about clay. And when we talk about clay and molding clay, and we make them into something like a potter making lines and lines and lines of identical pots, we are only limiting them to become a pot. Whereas their potential, and in fact, even our artistry as teachers, as parents, as leaders for children, our artistry could have achieved so much more potential with the same clay. And I think philosophically, this is where the concept of following the child goes, that every child does not necessarily need to end up being another pot in a baking line. You do not want your child to be another brick in the wall, even though a brick is a very good solid thing for a house, and for some it may be the right thing. So then what do we do to absolutely help our children and our students, however young they are? Remember, they are both children and students at this stage. What do we do to actually identify their potential? This is a question that I am asked consistently. How do I know that this is good for my child or not? Screen time is a classic question. How do I know that my child spending so much time on the screen is good for the child or not? In COVID times, we have to say, well, all their lessons are on screen. This is the only way. We, the privileged, have been able to access lesson. Think of those poor students who have not been able to access screens at this time. They are completely bereft. They have absolutely no guidance and no support in what they do. So coming back to those of us who have screens, who have privileges, who have the ability to think it through. Cognition is another word that Meghna used, that we have to do it consciously. She said consciously. I am adding cognitively, both consciously and having thought it through. But even if we think it through, we realize that we are subject to our own past experiences. In a way, let us frankly admit, we are slaves to our past experiences. And it is very, very difficult. It's an act of bravery. It's an act of daring for us to even think and imagine a universe beyond our past experiences. And our children are already living way beyond our past experiences. Srikanth, you referred to that in your inaugural. They are already living beyond anything that we had experienced before. Then what do we have in us to give them something else? What do we have in us to guide them? Are we then quite useless as guides? No, we are not. We are definitely not. We have a lot to give. We have pegs that we have put in our tent, pegs that we can hang our hat on based on our prior experience, because some values remain eternal. Truth remains eternal. Trust remains eternal. Leadership remains eternal. Progress remains eternal. Potential, the concept of potential remains eternal. How it plays itself out may change. So what do we have then around us to guide us in this? And I am going to take an analogy of this from the startup world for this conversation that we are having today. In the startup world, what tends to happen, and indeed, each child is a startup, if you want to think of it that way. In a limited sense, each child is a startup, and we want that startup to achieve its huge potential. What do we do with the startup? What do we tell every startup? We say, create a minimum viable product. Put it out there in the market. Let it learn from the feedback from the market. Based on feedback, we will improve the products steadily. And then we will let it go out into the market. Just what we do with children, right? Create a basic minimum viable product by putting them through nursery and by putting them through school. This is the basic product. Everybody is expected to have those basic concepts in their mind. They should be able to read, they should be able to write, they should be able to do simple calculus by class 12, or maybe calculus is not included anymore because that's a whole other conversation. And then we put them out into the market. While they are at school, they receive feedback and they continuously improve. And then we say, go out, child, and see what worth you can attain. And in that, we have done exactly what a startup has done. No more. Often we have got and we find ourselves trapped in the valuation game. Our child is worth the value they bring to us. Our child is worth the marks they bring at school. Our child is worth the income they can create and generate, and how much they can increase their income, how much their valuation goes up year after year. Till there comes a point when the child turns around and says, I was not ever interested in the valuation game. I wanted deeper values. Many of us, thankfully, realize this at the very beginning. Many of us who have been trained in child psychology and in childcare honestly have spent hours and hours working through this. Those of us who are teachers, we see the valuation game playing out and we say, this is not what we want for our little children. This is not how we want to start them out. So what is it that we can do to help our parents start them out and help ourselves not fall into the valuation trap? And that is where even the business world is coming to today. And the business world also realizes that the valuation game and the money game, etc., really did not take us too far. In fact, our greed brought us to this pandemic today. Our greed brought us to the 2008 financial crash, even before this. Our greed has always brought us to a fall. Our path has to be one of increasing the value, increasing the potential of our little child. And so how do we do that? How do we do that? I'm going to stick with the analogy of the startup world. Because when the startup world tries to grow and they go back to their investors, the people who actually are invested in their growth, the investors tell them, you will have to scale up. You have to become much bigger. And when you want to become much bigger, in order to become this next big thing, look for your adjacent markets. Where can you grow? Adjacent markets are markets that are very close. So suppose you are a beauty products company, then can you move into health? If you are a Nestle, for example, was able to grow dramatically because it became a wellness business about a decade ago. Let's learn from them because they've also spent a lot of time and money thinking this one through. Let's learn from them. This very concept of adjacent. The concept of adjacency is what I want to discuss with you today. This is where I want to spend 5 minutes really thinking it through. The concept of adjacency in early years for our little children is critical, and we have seen it succeed. So first, let me tell you where we have seen it succeed. And then I will talk for a couple of minutes about how to make it work to identify a child's potential and pivot them towards that potential. We've seen adjacency work in the sense of literally something adjacent is something next to what you have. When you put a little toy in front of a child, the child will play with that toy and sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for half an hour, depending upon the child, sometimes for only a minute. And then we'll turn to look at what is next, what is lying next to that toy, and we'll turn to that. And there will be some interest in that. So we are able to identify the child's interest in that. Sometimes it has been misused as well. For example, when we have gender-based toys, then we buy, if you go to a toy shop even today and ask for a toy for a 1-year-old, the first question the shopkeeper is going to ask, boy or girl? If you're in a European country, you walk into, or the US or the UK, you walk into a supermarket aisle, you have boys' toys and girls' toys, boys' clothes and girls' clothes, put in separately. Why is that? That is utilizing the adjacency effect. So when a girl picks up a toy that is, say, a toy pressure cooker, a cooking unit, a doll, for example, and the next toy lying next to it is also gendered, you are inculcating a gendered point of view in that child. For a boy, if you are buying some sort of a machine or a hammer or a toolkit, you are inculcating that gendered point of view for a child. Now, this does not happen in the best of nurseries. This does not happen in the best of schools. or in the best of families. It's only when we find ourselves trapped in our prior experience, we do that. I must take a minute again talking about the gendered experience in India. When we were children, all of us wore colors of all colors. This blue for boys and pink for girls was definitely not an Indian concept. My child grew up in the West, and if I dared put him in pink in the pushchair, everybody came and talked to him as if he was a girl. Again, assumptions and incorrect assumptions follow if you use adjacency in the wrong way, or you use adjacency to create pathways by force. Bringing this back to the original idea of followership that we spoke of. Adjacency works only in the spirit of followership. If you try to force a certain pathway for a child, then you are not discovering potential. You are not helping that child to become that artistic or that high value add individual that is the full expression of the human being. So in adjacency, all you are doing is observing. All you're doing is observing, and at every point of time, you are exploring. So in the nursery concept, and I am sure that many of your excellent teachers have explored that. Let us say we introduce, I'm going to use an example. We introduce the child to a flower. What are the adjacent concepts that align to a flower? We have color, and we can start exploring colors. We have shapes, we can start exploring shapes. We have textures, we can start exploring textures. We have smell. Now, extend this all the way through life. Do not stop in the early years. If your child is interested in learning about 15th century economics, who started this? When did money start? What is accountancy? Why do banks have debit and credit written on them? There are innumerable questions that your child will come to you, and your child comes to you as a student. And at that moment, your task is not just to answer the question. Your task is to bring in the concept of adjacency and extend the child's approach, not just to the question that they have asked, but to the 360 degrees of potential questions around that. Is it possible to always attain 360 degrees? Of course not. Even in the small scenario that we took, the little example of a flower, you may have somebody who is excellent in teaching shapes available to you at that point of time, but you may not have a smell expert available to you at that point of time. You may, in an institutional setup, as a parent, you may not actually understand smells too well. What do you do in that case? Do you give up the question? If you give up the question, you give up on the child's potential to go forth and find a career as a tea taster, as a perfumer, as somebody who works in the food industry. There are so many other things that a child can actually achieve if they suddenly become interested in something, even if you were not able to answer that. And how does that happen? With a great deal of humility. We are not here to provide the answers. Parents and teachers, we are not here to provide the answers. We are merely guides. And every guide carries with them the ability to search. Sometimes we search with them. Sometimes we search for them if they are too young to do it on their own. Sometimes they search for us and we follow that. But whatever we do, we keep up the search. We keep up the question. We keep asking, what next? What next? What's adjacent? And with this adjacency, we keep building our chain of questions, our chain of, in a way it is didactics for those of you who are professionals in the education space. In a way, we are hoping to enable an autodidactic approach to learning, but it cannot be done without the support of our materials, resources, questions, inspiration, exposure to all the adjacent ideas that enable a child to ask the first question. That spirit of questioning, that spirit of following through, the spirit of then exploring is going to be the nature of our guardianship and of our guidance in the years to come forward. I was also asked to speak briefly and connect this to the national education policy, and I must say this is exactly what has been endorsed in the national education policy for India right now. Because in the middle school year, they talk about exploration, they talk about discovery learning, they talk about being able to go out into the real world and have some actual experience in the real world. That can only happen if the foundation for that, sometimes people think of it as Montessori, a Montessori approach, but not necessarily a purely Montessori approach. I will leave that to the experts further on in this conference. But I would certainly encourage an adjacency approach, which simply says this, then what? What next? Where do we go? And to do this, I would just like to put down or offer to you 3 principles that have worked so far in groups of children who have proved to be successful. And this comes from groups, a little bit of research done with groups of teachers and students. These are very simple principles to put in practice. 1, of course, listen. You may not look like you're listening, but make sure your child knows that you have heard them and acted upon them. Listen with cognition. 2, whatever you do, whatever you decide, be consistent in your approach. Consistency is key to building trust with children, with building channels of communication. And this is why they will trust you when you guide them. Be consistent in everything that you do. And the third thing, I have said this twice before in this discussion, is followership. We can only follow our children. We can follow what they choose, adjacent and then adjacent to that, having supplied them with the best of what we could in terms of information, internet, examples, people to talk to, discussants. But we can only follow them in their pathway and enable that pathway. As long as we have this conversation continuously happening through the child's and students' growth, in all the way through to higher education and possibly even beyond, and we ourselves stand adjacent to the child and student and our growing, I will say growing children because I'm the mother of a 20-year-old, as long as we are able to stand adjacent to them and keep providing those building blocks, whichever ones they choose to climb, whichever ones they choose to work with, we would have done our job as educators and as parents. I think this is something that I dearly wanted to share with you, saying it is not time to be top-down teachers anymore. It is not time to be leaders in the classroom anymore necessarily. It is not time to tell students what to do. It is time to simply stand next to them and give them the building blocks of their growth, have those building blocks prepped, arranged, any which way adjacent to them so that they can discover their path. They can pivot whichever way they want, they can discover their potential on the building bricks that we have, blocks that we have created for them. Those of you who are technically minded, I can hear a question, is this not the same as scaffolding? Absolutely not. Scaffolding gives them a very clear structure to climb. Here we are giving them absolutely no structure. We are enabling them with a 360-degree potential on every question, every concept, every idea, every dream, every imaginative story that they create. Purple elephants on the ceiling was a family joke that I share with all of you. It has become something that has enabled creativity, that has enabled discussions on gravity, that has enabled discussions on every possible subject that you can think of. I have used these principles in the classroom, and I must say I'm genuinely proud of the students who have grown up in enabling themselves with adjacency. Every student may not be able to, but let us at least do our bit in giving them the next step and the next step for them to choose their own steps. Thank you very much for listening to me. If I am not sure how much more time I have because I do have a little bit more to say. But Meghna, you will be able to let me know if I have more time. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
For sure, if you have any points to share, please go ahead. We have our next keynote speaker as well here, and we will continue the discussion. So, anything that you want to go ahead with.
I think I'll pause here, and I would really love to listen to the next keynote speaker as well. So thank you very much for having me. I hope this was useful.
Oh,
I
so very much.
I offer the concept of adjacency, of potential, of pivoting, and of enabling a child rather than trying to direct a child. And I hope this is how we build the future.
For
Uh,
sure, and this is happening in Clay classroom, especially the three principles that you talked about is what we see happening across centers of Clay. And I'm so glad that this message is coming from a person of your stature because it will be well absorbed. And adjacency is the word that I will always remember whenever I think of you. I also remember our first conversation when you talked about the kachi baat and the pakki baat, if you can recall. And I would say your pakki baat is something that we will cherish forever, Meeta.
thank you ever so much. One quick word about the new education policy and about what you're doing at Clay Schools and how it connects.
Okay.
When the new education policy was announced, I remember the first 10 days of outrage of how are we going to do this? This cannot be implemented. And I spoke to a few schools, and the best schools have actually turned around, including exactly what you said, and said, but we are already doing this.
So
And
true.
just as you said, I think this is an act of acknowledging that we have put in a lot of hard work. Kudos and compliments to you for that, and we have got it right. The education policy does that. It is also an act of it. It is also a privilege for our students to associate with us and to associate with wonderful teachers such as you. And I think our task as teachers, again in all humility, is to share what we know.
True.
So
True.
we let us not just keep it to ourselves, the teachers who have not seen this kind of excellent teaching and who are afraid of the new education policy, let us show them that it's not that difficult. It's hard work. It's very hard work, but it's not scary. It's not a scary place. And they
And
are
it's
scared.
not impossible provided we join the links together. And thank you so much, Meeta, for
Thank you.
taking out time out from your busy schedule. Totally appreciate it, totally acknowledge that our part, and hope to see you more, hope to hear from you more. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a ton, Meeta. Moving on, friends, we really cannot continue our discussion if we only focus on the governance policy. We really need to bring the various links together and then propose to this world that this is where we are moving towards or changing towards. And to continue our discussion, we really cannot take away the significant role of parents in raising beautiful children. This is our humble tribute to all the mommies and daddies who are listening to us, watching us today. That as your representative, we have a superstar joining us. I feel thrilled. I, with special excitement, I would like to invite Asha Deol Taktani as our next person to join. And it is an honor, Asha, to have you here. Very, very thrill moment for me to have you here as a representative of the parent body across India. Very big welcome to you. And I really, really thank you for taking time out for all of us. Esha Deol Taktani needs no introduction, but I'll still do the honors for each one of you. She is a known face and name in the Indian film industry with her various Bollywood hits, but I would like to highlight the rich talent she comes with, which is the Odissi dances that she is blessed with. I personally love to see the Sita in you, Asha. It is a wonderful, wonderful movement for me to really see Sita coming on earth again through you. And I also thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed as a mother, as a child psychologist, as a teacher, reading your wonderful debut book, Amma Mia. the way you have poured your heart out in that book is very well seen, so easy to relate with, as I said to you in our previous conversation. And it is a really great honor to know more about your motherhood journey and the way you are raising your two beautiful daughters. The cover page talks volumes about your motherhood of Amma Mia. But and I thoroughly enjoyed every single journey of motherhood. You start from your own childhood and how the childhood is now for your children. But we would love to hear from the graceful lady herself. So over to you, Asha, and please do share your motherhood journey, and please tell us what motivated you to talk about your journey through this book, Amamiya.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for having me here. Um, I am extremely, honored to be on this platform with such well-versed panelists. For me, this is, a new journey, becoming a mother. And I think every woman, every girl goes through a major transformation when she embraces motherhood. I have been, by the grace of God, lucky to have embraced it twice. I have two little daughters, Radhya and Miraya, and they fill up my days and nights with a lot of excitement and joy. Um, Having written my first book as an author, Amamiya, I give entire credit to both my girls for turning me into an author. I have been from the film background, an actress, a dancer, a daughter, and now I am a mother and an author. Uh, well, Amamiya is my journey, my personal experiences, all put together in the hope to help new mothers. As new mothers, we have a lot of overwhelming moments, yet exciting moments. There are a lot of hurdles as new mothers we need to cross. No matter how prepared you feel you are, there's always something new that pops up. There are so many new surprises that I go through even today. Every day is a learning for me. In my book, it's the backbone of my book is food, um, and it's my journey as a little girl, growing up in a South Indian, a hardcore South Indian background household with my grandmother, grand aunt, mostly women-centric household, and how we were given almost every day idli and sambar and chutney. And I reached a point of saturation with my food. And I felt now that I'm a mother, I can't do the same thing with them because food can get really a tedious task between feeding your kid and experimenting with different dishes and making sure that your child is taking interest in what they're eating. So I give my examples of the mistakes that I made as a little girl with food, and my journey, how I fell in love with food over the years. It took me to fall in love with food. My husband was the one who actually turned me into a foodie and into a cook. I never knew how to cook food before because I started working at the age of 18 and I didn't have any time to enter the kitchen. But today I think I'm doing pretty well. So in my book, there are more than 200 recipes, simple, easy to make, no fuss, no gourmet, no, not too much of style into it. It's all simple ghar ka khana, from 6 months to 1 year old babies, and then 1 year onwards. The recipes are there, which have been made and fed to my kids, and they worked very well. Um, so I think this book is basically a helping hand from me to other new mothers, saying that we all are in this together, and if I can go through certain hurdles, whatever it is, whether it's to do with breastfeeding, postpartum depression, simple things where there is so many voices in your head and so many people telling you things to do, how we have to be sure that we are listening to our motherly instinct. I follow my motherly instinct at the end of the day, and that seems to be working well. So, well, all this is put together in my book, and I'm extremely overwhelmed by the response I've been getting. Though the book was, happened to release just when the pandemic started, it's been doing well. It's been well received, and I'm happy because my intention was just to help the moms, the new mothers, and they all are enjoying cooking the recipes and finding the book very useful. So this is my little contribution towards motherhood in my own way.
So true, Asha. And like you have written in your book, motherhood is beyond class, caste, creed, and I would say motherhood is beyond this pandemic. So the book is going to shine. It will, it will go away because it is so easy to relate with. When I was reading about your episodes of breastfeeding or your episodes about you got hurt and mom was not close to you, as working mothers we all go through these kind of challenges, leaving our children behind, and it is not an easy task after you enter into motherhood. It's altogether a different change. But one thing that we all have noticed while raising our children, that children are the most noble creation of God, and it is something of high significance for us to know that there is some responsibility on our shoulder, because we are not only raising our children, we are giving to or one responsible citizen to the country that will shape up the future. So, keeping that in mind, I'm sure many mommies and daddies would like to hear, do you feel that sense of responsibility on you, and do you feel that there is something that a parent should be aware of while raising children? What is it that goes in your mind when you are raising your two beautiful daughters?
I think it is entirely in our hands to shape them into amazing human beings. It is our duty, it is our privilege to mold our children into being, the best of their own versions. Um, I have a major example in my life, and that is my grandmother. She, and today everyone knows what my mother has shaped herself into with the help of her mother. My grandmother has been an extremely strong pillar in my mother's life right from the day she was born. I can vouch that she has been her backbone, her support system, and she has made her into who she has become today. I wish to be a similar kind of a mother. She was very strict, no doubt, and I think I will be the same way. Also having learned from mistakes that we have made as teenagers and girls, and while growing up, I am very well aware of what the new generations have to offer. Um, so I will definitely be a hands-on mother that I am right now, and I will continue to be so. Um, I have two daughters, so I have to make sure that they have their main principles as dignity and self-respect, and shape them into strong women who definitely do choose careers and are able to stand on their own 2 feet, irrespective of having a partner. you know so these are principles that I would definitely imbibe on my children, similar to the way we have been brought up. Also, I think, uh, did I lose you there? Did
No, no, please go ahead. We are listening to
No,
you very
right?
well.
Okay. So I think it is up to us to definitely shape them. And right now, what I am doing, because my daughters are too young, but from my side, the main focus of mine is to just observe them and see their behavior, their likes and dislikes, whether it's to do with food, whether it's to do with their activities or anything. I observe them a lot because that is helping me discover their personalities. And I'm not the kind who's going to stop them from making their choices. We all have to grow by making mistakes. That's how we learn. You got to fall, get up, and that's what makes you a stronger person. But I will definitely make sure that I'm there to, like a pillow for both of them.
So true. And I love the way you say it, that you need to observe your children. That's a great takeaway for every parent in Clay preschools and daycare. Whenever we interact with parents, that's a message we try to give out. that you need to be just enabler, and that's exactly our previous keynote
Yeah.
speaker,
I
Ms.
think
Neeta
it's
Sen Gupta.
important to be aware of what they are doing and observing them. Um,
So
you
true.
know,
Yeah, and when you observe, actually, children tell you very clearly, this is what I like, this is what will not excite
yes,
me.
yes.
And I'm sure you must
I,
have.
I mean, I communicate a lot now with my elder one. She's little
Uh-huh.
bigger and easier to communicate with. So, for example, when it comes to food, I was having at one point trouble, getting to figure out what exactly this girl is going to enjoy eating. And then I realized that, introducing variety and variation in the diet is very important. Getting them take interest in what they're eating, making them aware of what a pasta is and what noodles are. So my daughter and me, even though she was younger earlier and couldn't communicate that much, but I used to be vocal and talk to her about all this. So today she tells me, very openly that I want to eat this or I don't want to eat this. So I think having
And
that verbal communication, whether they are understanding you or not, from a very young age is important. So then they know that they have you who they can come and communicate with and talk to freely about anything.
that's so true. And respecting their choices as individuals. We all have
Yeah,
our own choices as well.
yeah,
And
even
it
though they're tiny.
yeah, and it is high time that we understand that as significant adults around our children, that they too can have choices, they too can have their own
Yeah,
opinions. And as
yeah,
parents, as caregivers, we need to respect that as much as possible. Not at the cost of discipline in life, but yes, it has to be respected for sure. We heard all the good stories, Asha. I would like to hear your challenges as well, because I know parenting is not a bed of roses. All of us have our own challenging moments, be it a mommy of your caliber, your stature, or a normal mommy like me. We all have our own challenges, and motherhood comes with a lot of joy, a lot of excitement, but also with a lot of responsibility and challenges.
yes, yes, yes.
Would you like to
Um,
share some so that the audience can relate and can share their own stories in the chat window as well?
yes, absolutely. Um, See, every step of the growth of your child is going to be a new challenge. The minute you feel you've understood this phase and you're doing well, there's something new that pops up, because the child is growing, and the more they grow, the more they explore, the more they are going to be open to the outside world. For example, when my elder one had to start her play school, you
Oh,
know
yeah.
that was a
You
big challenge for me, of letting go of this little bundle of joy of mine who's been stuck to me whole day, and letting her go for those 2 hours was a big challenge. I didn't know how to handle it, and I think I drove my child's school's principal a bit crazy in that bargain, because I was not comfortable. I didn't know how to let go of her. Similarly, we are the ones who are responsible for the choices of which school they're going to get into, what kind of education they want, till they reach a certain age of knowing what they want. Till then, we have to make sure that we are not making a mistake anywhere or making a wrong choice. So those are all challenging steps and decisions that we have to take as parents. Similarly, I'm a working mother also. I have some shoots that I need to go to, or dance performances, and then leaving them at home and going out. I have to decide the kind of work I want to take up today. Whether it's reading scripts and deciding what next project I can take up. It's up to me. It's my decision, and those are very tough for me to take, because I need to know that I'm able to give 100% to my job out there when I go and I'm shooting, because it's a big responsibility there. Yet leaving them back home, how are they going to be taken care of? Who's going to be there with them? I am extremely thankful for the family that I have around me, whether it's my mother, my mother-in-law, my husband. It's them who we can trust and leave the children back home with, while working mothers can step out. So we must you know uh, take advantage of it also, and make sure that we
true.
continue working, because we have
Yeah,
those sort of systems in our country, especially in
so
India.
true. Oh, yeah. The family system in India is a big blessing to raise children. You need a village to raise a child, and I think India is a perfect platform. All the people who have joined us from global areas, I would really say, come join us, share your thoughts, and take the best out of India because, yes, it provides a
Yes,
great platform of upbringing. Some quick advice says before we open the spectrum for audience and take up their questions, Asha, this is something of high significance for me as a mother to hear from another mother because it's not only venting, it's also learning from each other. Some best practices. While I was reading, Amami, I love the way you clearly says the prioritize your life and so important it is. I
yes,
also should say to you that your philosophy resonates with our philosophy very much when we say, mommies and daddies, put your oxygen mask first before you put it on your children. Take care of yourself. But I
yes.
would love to hear from your on ground experiences, your learnings, your lessons, some advice that you would like to share with new moms out there, the young moms out there.
Well, I would like to talk about the current times and give
Sure.
certain tips on what we have been doing and what is helping us with two toddlers at home, uh, and even otherwise on a regular day,
Mm-hmm.
on a day without a pandemic also. We have a routine set for the kids, for the girls. I've always had it from day one, whether it was her feed timings, her food timings, or her sleep timings. Now, of course, it's added on to play time, activity time, or online schooling, and stuff like that. So we have a timetable which helps us also do our own work. I like to work out. I like to give that 1 hour of the day to myself for my self care and my fitness. Or whether it's like right now, I'm sitting with you all and doing this, wonderful summit while my daughters are taking a nap. So that's what is allowing me to. Otherwise, they want me all the time. So getting them on a timetable and making sure my work timings are matching to theirs helps. Sleep time, nap, food time, play time, online classes, um, and being at home right now, we need to get as creative as we can with our kids because there's no going out, there's no meeting friends, there's no going to the park, no play dates. So I think we as parents have to be as entertaining as we can for our children without uh, you know there is the big hassle of screen time and watching television or cartoons. I don't restrict them, so I give them like 20-25 minutes, but I'm sitting there, or I make sure someone elder is there with them while they're watching. Most of the time I'm there. um, so we got to keep them entertained the right way without getting them distressed and or restless in these kind of times.
So
So
true. And Asha, I'm so thankful to you as psychologist that you are highlighting the concept of routine. You won't believe, but in past 6 months, all the webinars that Clay School has conducted, one thing that we have been highlighting again and again is that routine is the key of happiness for children. Time and again, research has highlighted that routine gives predictability to child's mind, and predictability gives the sense of security to children. And this is the
okay,
philosophy with which we work, and we encourage many mommies and
no,
daddies to take
that's
note of the
great
same.
then. So I'm doing it
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Oh, no, this is of high significance if coming from you because this is what our humble attempt in communicating this strong message out there that parents, you had the luxury of sleeping anytime till the time you enter into parenthood. But once you enter into parenthood, you create a
I
routine
did.
for yourself.
I did.
Awesome.
I was working. I used to get up at 5:36 in the morning and run to work and be back home at night. So I've never had the privilege of sleeping for too long.
So true. And this is something, Asha, we will really say to many parents that kindly bring back routine to your life once you enter into parenthood, because that gives a consistency to the whole family. And children imbibe what they see around them. It is not that
Yes.
you can
I
talk
think
about
getting your
routine.
husband on a routine is tougher than getting the kids on a routine.
We will come back to that simply because we have questions pouring in for you, Asha, and I would really have to club questions. So, audience who is listening
Absolutely.
to us,
Please go ahead.
uh,
Yeah.
audience who is listening to us, let me be very clear. It is impossible to take all the questions, but we'll try to club and see the similar questions and put these questions out for Asha. Something very close to my heart. I would love to hear from you. What audience is asking is the difference between a working mom's journey and a stay-at-home mom's journey, Asha. You have wonderfully written about your mommy and mom-in-law when you are talking
Yeah.
about working mother and stay-at-home mom. I personally thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm also a child of a working mom and I'm a working mom, but the way you have described the journey of stay-at-home mom, it's
Yes.
wonderful. It's really wonderful read. I would recommend everybody to read that
Thank
portion
you.
for sure. So, would you say a mommy dear is asking over here? Is it challenging for both, or you say it's easy for one, or can you share your thoughts on stay-at-home
Um,
life and
okay.
working
So,
mom life?
I mean, for me, I have, like I've said, from a very young age, been surrounded by working women, working mothers. And my own mother has been a big example of a working mother. And when it came to us, if I give you my mother's example of a working mother, she would shoot I mean, I think almost every day. I would have memories of my mother getting up, doing makeup, and going for shoots, coming back home in the evenings to spend time with us. So the whole day we were taken care by, of course, my grandmother, my grand aunt, and we had our nurse, nanny, or that time I think it was called the nanny only.
Mm-hmm.
So they would handle us and take care. So I think being a working mother, you need to have that kind of a support system, or any kind of a support system, whether it's your own spouse or your mother-in-law. Have one trusted family member back home with the child, and then you can go and work and come. But it was very difficult for my mother. She's expressed herself to me so many times now that we are grown up, that her heart used to ache when she would leave us and go for shoots, but she was left with no choice but to had to fulfill her work commitments. So I think working mothers go through that challenge of guilt of leaving their child home and having to go to work. My mother-in-law has been a thorough housewife and a stay-at-home mom, and her entire life has been dedicated to her sons and her husband. I think with them the challenge is, they are like hands-on to an extent of doing everything for the child. And initially, I think it is difficult because then people expect them to do everything for the child without seeking any help or house help. Uh, and what I feel I noticed is they have a they have spent so much time with the child that once the child grows up or has to go abroad to study and make use I mean grow ahead in their life, they find that period very challenging of letting go. uh, yeah,
When the
they have
preparation
that
of that starts quite early.
umbilical cord issue, I think.
That reminds me
uh,
of my own episode, Asha. When I was giving birth, my gynecologist of 80 years told me, "Hey, I'm cutting the umbilical cord. Be ready to understand that your child came through you, not from you. So, child is a separate entity. You are not
yeah.
producing another you."
Yes.
That's
But
so true.
having said, both are challenging, both have their pros and cons. But at the end of the day, a mother is a mother. So the feelings and the heart is the same. I mean, I think all mothers have one heart.
That's
Like
so
all our
true.
hearts
And
are connected. It's the
Oh yeah,
same.
and I laughingly say to my children, "Hey, buddy, my heart is walking outside. You two are walking around me, so my heart is
Yeah.
walking outside." That's so true as a mother. But we have couple of questions from Daddy dears for you, Asha, and
Oh,
I'm so glad if daddies you are sitting here and listening. That talks volumes about your parenthood. So congratulations, kudos to you, clapping for you that you are so
thank you.
involved in this journey of parenting. So daddies, my humble request to you to keep sharing your questions. But most of the questions that are coming from daddies is talking about your understanding, Asha, and your while raising your children. What do you think the significance of daddy? The fatherhood, and we see a shift where daddies are more involved than ever in parenting. It's so much true for Indian urban parenting. So many daddies want to ask, is it true for you also, and how much the contribution from your partner in parenting?
Absolutely. What a lovely question, all the daddies. Thank you. And the fact that they are sitting and being part of this is itself showing a huge change that has a shift that has happened where today I think all credit goes to the mothers of this generation who have made sure that they have pulled their partner in to be equally responsible for their child's growth. Also, I think a parent, it's parenting, so it's both of us have to be involved, the mother and the father, and the child, for the child's growth into the human being the child shapes up into without any insecurities. A father is a very important role in a child's life. The mother is always there, but I think every child needs that hand of, I don't know whether it's the hand of power, the hand of God, but it's the hand of protection, is the right word, that comes from a father. Um, and it helps the child grow up into a very confident human being. Every child needs that yin and yang energies in their life, and I think it's amazing the way today some women, I do it sometimes when I need to go for an outdoor shoot for a week or something. I make sure that it's a pact between my husband Bharat and me that if I'm not in town, you got to be in town, you know irrespective of the fact that his mother is there or my mother is there, or other relatives are there, but one of us has to be there with the child. And right from the beginning, Bharat has been very, very good with kids. He's the eldest in his family, so he's had a good share of taking care of younger babies in his household. So he's been in fact, with the smaller the baby is, he's better. Like, I remember both my girls were till 6 months, he would handle them better than me, you know. It's so nice, and we feel very relieved to know that they are part of it. So I think fathers have to play an important role. You have to also support your partner, support your wife, and be hand in hand in this, because you can't just leave her alone to do everything and run to work. You have to be involved in every step of your child's growth. It's
So
very
true,
important.
and daddy dear, if you are listening to us, it's a great opportunity. Like Asha said in the beginning, it's a privilege to have children around you and contribute in giving to responsible citizen to this country. So play your part. Humble request from both of us. There is no way the fatherhood can be replaced. And daddy dear, your presence matters. Your presence matters in parenting. So please continue the beautiful role that you are already doing. Some real questions, Asha. Mommy dears, couple of them are asking a very honest question. So, mommies who are asking this kind of question, a big hug to you. They are saying, I have my moments of frustrations and I end up shouting at my children. More so true during this lockdown period where I lose my temper and I really feel bad about it. Is it true for you too? And if it happens, what is it that you do to control your moment of frustrations?
Touch wood, I have a short fuse with everyone else in my life, but when it comes to these two, I've not yet lost it. So I um, I think Um, I don't know. I'm not. Uh, I don't want to also.
Yeah,
Uh,
so true.
I correct them. I correct them when they are wrong. I am strict. It's not that I'm
Mhm,
not, that do what you
mhm,
want and make a mess of the room and throw paint on the wall. No, I am
mhm.
strict. But I have made it a point to, I think my patience level over the years has just improved so well and so much. I think also because of the profession that I belong to, we need a lot of patience being actors. That has helped me a lot in being a very patient mother. I have not lost my patience level with them. I am strict, I correct them. But you know what happens to me when I have my moments of maybe I'm going to burst now and scream. I immediately think of the same thing that my child will do back to me after a couple of, months or something, thinking it's okay that if mama shouted and spoke to me in that tone and loud voice, I can do the same thing. So we need to be very careful about the way, even as partners, when my husband and me, we talk, we make sure that we are communicating, especially in front of the kids, in a softer tone. And if we really need to blast each other, it's done later on in the room after the kids have gone to bed or something. So I think in front of them, we have to keep our communication as subtle and soft as possible, because they are going to pick up from you and they are going to talk back to you the similar way sooner than later. So every time you want to lose your cool, moms, just remember this one thought, and I think that should help to stop it.
Very great practical tip coming from you, Aisha. Thank you so much for highlighting that. Just to add on to that, I would say, parents, no harm in telling your child that, hey, buddy, I'm about to shout or lose temper. So let's break the conversation. You leave the physical space and then continue. Instead of blasting at your children, take a break from that conversation. Like she rightly said, you know that you are about to blast. So kindly control and just say, hey, buddy, before I end up shouting, let me take a break. Very good question coming next one, Esha, for you to move on. Something from real ground experience from a mother, and she is talking about going back to workforce about after childbirth. Most of the women are highlighting here that they had to leave their career path to take care of their children, not because they have much of some family support or any professional support, and they really feel bad about it at times while raising their children, and sometimes they enjoy that they took this decision. Was it same for you going back to workforce about after childbirth? Did you face some kind of challenges?
Um, see, when it came to my work, uh, s- I am somewhere I like to prioritize uh, the graph that we have as women in our in life. I think, for example, I think for women to have children before a certain age is very important. Women similarly wanting to get back to work without giving too much of a gap is also important. So it's a matter of how you are able to create a setup in your surroundings which gives you that comfort of going back to work. I think any mother, the first day she gets back to work after having her baby, it's the toughest day. It is the toughest day. I prolonged that day for a very long time. I deliberately prolonged reaching that day for a very long time till I was comfortable, especially with Radhya. Uh, I took up short work trips, uh, and I shot for a film only after, I think, 8 to 9 months of post my delivery is when I went to Calcutta and shot for a film. I didn't want to do it before that, and I put my foot down and I told the director that you got to wait for some time because I'm not going to leave her so soon and go. And those leaving her also when she was 9 months and going was I was all the
Must
time
be
on my
challenge.
phone, on watching the camera in her room and talking to her and communicating with her, and that's why I felt that taking up work or shoots in Bombay is easier than doing an outdoor when they're really small, Now, of course, they are big and settled. Um, Also, see, with me, I like to take up challenges also in life. So I had a very nice opportunity to do a dance performance after 5 months after my delivery, the first baby. And this show had come to me much before, when I was pregnant only. So I said, yes, we'll do it when it comes. So that was 5 months after my delivery. I had my solo Odissi dance performance at Shri Fort Auditorium in Delhi. Now,
Wow.
what was the most interesting part about this was, after childbirth and when you're feeding your child, I think we all put on more weight because you're eating so healthy, you're feeding your child, and that's when the weight gain happens. So that was a challenge that I took up, that I want to, sort of get back into shape and fit into my dance costume and get on stage and dance for those 2 hours. So that's why I took that up. So it depends on, your reasons for wanting to get back to work. It is tough. It is not easy. And if there is no support system, then it's very difficult. But I think, again, to the daddies who are here, you have fallen in love with your wives, married them, and for women who've had a career and worked so hard for such a long time and created a name for themselves, it's their own identity. Don't stop them from their growth. We have all right to keep growing in life, and if we have worked hard and made a name for ourselves, why should we just shut it and forget about it? So I think it's very important for all women to continue pursuing their dreams, their work after motherhood also. The timing is entirely up to you, according to your comfort, but don't stop. Continue your growth of your profession.
Very true, Asha, and it's a great message coming out from her. Mommies, if you are listening, be ready to make some compromises and adjustments. Life is not the same after the entry of child, but it is very important to continue working. In fact, recent studies highlight that working mothers, those mommies who join workforce back within the 2 years of childbirth, their emotional health is found to be far more positive in their 40s, because it is
Okay.
so important to continue working and find your own place, and
Yes.
it is a good break from the routine for you also. So working mommies out there, it might be a tough road, but worth trying for sure. One more question coming, Asha, for you, and very important aspect of Indian parenting. So people from UK, US who are listening to us, they would love to know. I think this is a question from that side of the world, that what is it about the grandparents in Indian parenting, the role of grandparents, and sometimes parents feel it is interfering in the routine, like you highlighted about the significance of routine, but sometimes they are a big support as well. And like you highlighted that your grandmother played a very great role in your life, so would you like to share your thoughts on the journey within Indian families where grandparents play a very crucial role?
What is the question they want to know about?
That sometimes it is challenging to have grandparents and family because they interfere with their overlap. Though it is many a times a support system, but sometimes parents and grandparents have difference of opinion in raising children. Have you faced that, something like that?
So I think it's important to set your ground rules before even the
Mm-hmm.
child arrives. Sometimes, because you're having a conversation probably with your own mother or father or your husband's parents. If you find it difficult to communicate with your in-laws, then get your husband to talk to them. Uh, it's important to set the ground rules from before. That helps. Half the battle is won then and there. And personally, I think grandparents are like angels in our lives. I was so attached to my grandmother, and I thank God I had a grandmother who was part of my growing up years and who played one of the most important roles in my life. Uh, Whether it was teaching me Hindi or doing teaching me art, and she's been a very educated and a very disciplined woman herself. So having someone like that around me was just a plus point. uh, and it's important, like I said, we need to, like, my mother doesn't interfere. She's very
Mm-hmm.
clear that you you know, you bring up your babies the way you want. But she always tells me that you learn from my experiences. You see where you guys went wrong, and that was a tough period for me, and you will go through the same thing. So be aware when your child, while your child, as you know, as your child grows, how you want to keep them protected, shape them up, etc., etc. As far as, you know, respect, tradition, values, all that is something that grandparents are a great boon to be having around to teach your children. Having elders around at home is so nice, because automatically your child has that love and respect for elders, which comes directly from home. You're learning it at home. Um, and I think having them around also, we get little free time to breathe. I just had my in-laws over our house for a week. They stayed, they just left today. So having both of them, Radhya and Miraya's dada dadi, was just great, because in the evenings they would, you know, interact with the kids, this that. So I mean, you know, somewhere I got a little breather having them around. And they have been very sweet and very disciplined grandparents. So they listen to what we want them to do. You know, a little bit of problems are. I think most of us go through that, is where the kid goes and takes the grandmother or grandfather's mobile phone, and we don't give them the phone in their hands. So that is a little fight I tend to have sometimes with my mom, that why you showing her this particular song on your phone, or you know, that talking Tom. Uh,
So true. Yeah.
yeah, so those things I don't want her to do, but then I look at it in a way that it's 5-10 minutes of little joy, it's okay. And my mother knows I don't want her to do it, but still she'll do it. Poor child, let her do it. So these are little tutu mema every household has, you know.
Yes. True.
But for me, the most joy that I get is when I see my parents spending time with my children. That is one of the most beautiful visuals I cherish watching, and I just cherish seeing my mother and father spending time with my daughters, because they are
So
all
true.
mine, and it's just
Yeah.
lovely seeing that, you know. uh, I think having for me, I think having grandparents is a blessing, is a boon, and we need to respect them, respect the fact that we have them around, and also enjoy the perks of having your grandparents around. Enjoy the perks of, you know, you can go on a date night with your husband, trust your parents with the kids. The nanny will be watched properly by them, you know. So I think all this happens in every household.
So true. And I really did not realize, Asha, that we have crossed our time limit of this
Oh,
conversation. We really need to move on to the panel
please.
discussion. The panelists are waiting over there. Please stay with us, Asha. I am introducing the panelists meanwhile. So much to take away from you, but let's continue the discussion and hear from other stakeholders about what they have to bring on table, and then we will try to connect the dots of parents, educators as well. So please stay here, and I would like to introduce the next panelist to continue the panel discussion. Though we all have our own different roles to play, mommies and daddies, you have your significant role to play. Nita started about the conversations of being enabler and adjacency. And when we are talking about adjacency, we need to bring various perspective on one table. So my very first panelist on board today to discuss about unison and working in unison is Ms. Fariha Rizwan. Fariha Rizwan holds an MBA and a master's degree in education. She has been associated with early years education for last 18 years and comes with a rich experience of bringing policy to practice, joining straight from Sweden and adjusting her time zone. Totally appreciated, Fariha. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Fariha. We'll continue our discussion about working in unity, but for that, I need to invite the second panelist, Parul Ori. Parul Ori is the chief editor of Momspresso, India's largest content platform for mothers. Her TEDx talks are widely acclaimed, highly appreciated, and she has worked extensively in gender stereotypes, functioning and controlling, and positive parenting. So happy to have you here, Parul. It's an honor to share this platform with you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you so much, Parul. And we cannot continue this discussion until and unless we bring the teacher's perspective. I feel immense pleasure in introducing Professor Rishikesh to this audience. He has worked extensively with teacher education, and he is right now working at Azim Premji University as associate professor. He has worked with more than a dozen states in India, and worked with thousands of teachers on ground. So somebody coming from the background of a lot of ground experience. Very warm welcome to you, Rishikesh. Happy to have you here. We can't hear you, Rishikesh, if you are on mute.
Hello, Meghna. Yeah, I was on mute. Thanks for that cue. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much. And we were already talking to Asha, one more panelist that we have on board today, when we are talking from the parent perspective. What a wonderful discussion, and how many perspectives we heard from mommy herself. So when Isha was around, it was wonderful to hear from a parent perspective. But to continue our discussion on how do we unite the links and how do we connect the dots now, let's take the discussion a little further and ponder on why we are sitting for this particular discussion, why we are sitting and talking in terms of bridging the gaps and bringing all the agencies together. My humble request, if you are a parent, hear more from a teacher perspective, and if you are a teacher educator, hear more from a parent perspective, because we need to empathize with each other to make this conversation fruitful and really useful. So, my very first thing for Asha, because we were already talking, would you like to share, Asha, about in comparison to your own childhood, how different is the childhood for children now? We will first hear it from parent and parent bodies, and then we will talk a little bit more about the different roles. So, Asha, can you please share about the difference or your thoughts on how has childhood changed?
Well, first, hello to all the other panelists. It's nice to have all of you all here along with me. Uh, is my network good? Because I think I lost a bit of network in the middle.
No, we can very well
Are you
hear you,
able to
Asha, right
hear
now.
me? Okay. Um, well, I was a kid who grew up in the 80s in Bombay. Now my daughters are growing up in, you know, 2017 one and in 2019. I think back then things were more simple, more uh, simple in the sense we, I think, were very, very innocent children. We were really naive, not very exposed to the outside world. We were kids who held a lot of innocence within us. We were kids. We were babies. We were what we were supposed to be. I think today's children are very, very smart. They talk, at least when if a 3-year-old is talking, the 3-year-old sounds like a 7-year-old kid talking. So their growth with the way they communicate, the way they talk and express themselves is very, very mature compared to the way we were back then. I think a lot has to do with exposure, with especially with technology and visibility of so much of diversity of knowledge and unwanted knowledge also that one child is exposed to. There can be good knowledge and there can be bad knowledge. So there's a lot of exposure to that happening today. Also, we would, for example, go to physically go and play a game of football or throw ball, or physically go for a walk to the beach, go for a swim. There was a lot more physical activity that we did back then. when it came to playing games or sports, is what I'm being more precise about. Today, a lot of kids I see playing a game of soccer, football, on their iPads, and painting also. There are apps where kids are just, with their finger, they're so used to doing stuff on the iPad. Whereas when you physically hold a paintbrush and paint, there is so much more enjoyment to that, which I see is lacking in today's time in a big way. um, I think there is definitely growth in a good way that is happening. The education systems have really grown tremendously, tenfolds to what they were back then. I have studied in an ICSE school. It still exists today, but the same school also has IB education. So now as parents, we have to make a choice whether we want your kid to have the same system of yours that you grew up with, or you want them to get into IB. So there's definitely lots more good that is happening, but I feel there's a big lack of that innocent childlike behavior that a child should have.
Oh, yeah, so true. Children are growing real quick, much more than their ages. How about you, Parul? Because we have seen you have worked with thousands of mom, and is your experience resonating what Rasha's observations are on childhood and how it is changing?
Oh, absolutely. I think Yesha's bang on when she says, that we were in much simpler times. We were growing up at a time where they didn't have so much exposure, they didn't have so much access to information, and information does make you grow up faster. There's no doubt about that. So we were 13-year-olds who were 13-year-olds. These kids are 13 going on, I don't know, 18, 19, or maybe even older. But surely, of course, childhood has changed completely. Well, they have one less planet to study about. Pluto has been demoted. So, just to give you an indication, it's quite interesting that, there's this saying that the more things change, the more they remain the same. I remember dancing to ABBA music, with my parents. And I'm still doing that. I'm still dancing to ABBA music with my children, but the packaging has changed. We listened to the band, we listened on those LP vinyl records. My children are listening to it on their phone, and because of Mamma Mia. So, some things have changed, some things have remained the same, things have got repackaged. Whatever is still the same has got repackaged. But yeah, it's definitely a different, a different generation entirely. But to talk about how childhood has changed, we also have to see how parenting has changed, right? I mean, we're giving kids much more than we had. We want them to have all those opportunities. We want them to be more than we were. We're putting them, exposing them to all kinds of activities, sometimes overscheduling. And yet we're not, exposing them to personal responsibilities, chores that we used to do, whether it was simple things like ironing or, polishing shoes or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But that responsibility, we're giving them less. We're giving them more exposure. Family structures have changed as not just nuclear families, but also single parents. And it'll keep changing. In fact, this is going to be an ongoing process, because it's not going to stop right now. There'll be, once we are more acceptable to, different diverse gender norms, then there's going to be same-sex parents and everything. It's going to keep changing, and obviously children will adapt. They're very quick to adapt. But if I have to sum it up, I would say the changes are in two areas, two S's: safety and social media. Especially where safety is concerned, it kills me that I tell my children that, you can be what you want, you can do what you want, the sky's the limit, go soar your wings, but come back before dark, wear appropriate clothes, don't go here, don't go there, don't talk to these people. And I'm not just restricting them outside the house. Inside the house, online behavior also has to be checked, has to be scrutinized. So that safety aspect, and sometimes, okay, we might be sounding paranoid, and I don't blame us as parents, because, we've had this discovery of risk. Everything seems to be a potential danger. But okay, so at the risk of sounding paranoid and all, we are raising children in this environment of fear, which we didn't have, which we somehow escaped, even though there were things happening around us, but not to this extent. The other S is, of course, social media. And Aisha's already touched upon it, how, the internet has changed our world. And it's everything, it's this whole over recording of your life. It's this filter, the filter that you put in every picture that you put up. You're only putting up certain aspects of your life. You're making sure that it's Insta worthy. So if your first question is my picture Insta worthy, then obviously, that whole worthiness takes on a different dimension. It becomes a part of your life. How worthy are you? So I think it's very, very tough. Children are growing up in a very, very tough environment. And I've said that, repeatedly at many forums, that I totally get it. Parenting is tough. Parenting these children is really, really tough. And I think it's basically, we need to realize that at the end of the day, if they've gone into a virtual world, that is their world. And rather than putting our energies in saying, ki, acha, time kam karo, screen time nahi chahiye itna zyada and all, we have to put in our energies to make sure that their world is safer and more productive than what it is right now. So I think that's where the change is. The geographical landscape of childhood has changed, and so many factors around it.
So true, and the world is changing for sure, and that's why childhood is changing. And when we were talking about, I was listening to you very carefully about that ABBA music, and my mind is going towards the world now. So, Fariha, do you see the similar shift when you work in different parts of the world? What is your experience while raising your own child as well as children that you see in your school?
To be very honest, it's really interesting to see different perspectives right now, coming from a mother, a working mother, coming from a person who is like working literally as a counselor, meeting like other families and all that, and their perspective, how they grew up, their like, backgrounds, 80s or, 90s or whatsoever. I'm like from 80s. I got my first computer when I was like maybe 13, 14, and I was really excited about it. Children in this age, when they are born, they have like, either iPad or something in their hands. Pretty smart. I would not say that we were innocent. We were less aware. These children are more aware, to be very honest, And from where they're getting this awareness, of course, internet, social media, and all these things. In Sweden, what we practice ICT, like technology is one of the major things that we practice in our preschools, in our daycares and schools. How to like, educate children how to use these technology in a most best way possible, not just watching like some movies or some apps or something like that. Yeah, it's fun to experience like, you're actually practicing everything with your hands. For me, classrooms should not be just four walls. It should be like, where we are breathing. Right now we're having a discussion. For me, whenever I'm having a discussion, the most important point for me is I'm not having a discussion with a parent how to be a better parent or how to act with a child. We all are learning how to be better parents, to be very honest. None of us has any degree how to be a parent. We learn with our children. That's a journey that we have with our children, whether they are our own children or we work with children. In Sweden, it's really, really multicultural society, to be very honest. We have parents, whether they are single parents coming from like, another culture altogether, parents, both mothers, both fathers, how we educate our children, that is our strength, to be very honest. That they are aware that this is happening around us. There are no secrets. This is the world we are breathing in right now, which is for me, as a teacher, as a facilitator, or as a mother, the most beautiful thing, that we are open to these discussions. Of course, when they bounce back their questions or ideas, that's why we are having that discussion with them, not just like, hide things from them. That the risk is there. It's all over the world, to be very honest. There is no safe place or there is no like unsecure place kind of thing as well. It's all over the place. For me, when it comes down to awareness and, global shift or transforming childhood, we are using all these things in a very, very pedagogical way in Sweden.
Mhm.
Why we are experiencing this global warming, basically. How can we contribute? How can we utilize their energy in the most possible way? A child can, pick up a garbage from a street. Yeah, we start that thing when a child is 1 year old. They go out with their teachers for outings and they do pick up trash from the streets. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter which country or which culture they're coming from. This is the contribution that we are bringing them together with us to contribute towards the society. This is like one of the things that I really, really like about like, working in Sweden, technology and these like, transformations. Again, we have families coming all over the world, including India, to be very honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, it's not just like, elite diplomats, they are traveling around the world. They are middle class families. They are here to work, including myself. We share our
Yeah.
culture. We share who we are, where we are coming from. This is what makes us like, I don't know. I'm a bit sensitive about these things, to be very honest. When it comes down to children, I don't see them as little children. For me, they are just like young people. The respect we give to them, what is the expectation? For me, I think teachers and parents, they have a lot of expectation from their children or from other children. Are we meeting their expectations? That has been the biggest question for me from everyone, whoever I talk to. So
So
expectation level
true.
has to be clear.
So true, Fariha. And we have come to some part of our discussion where we have concluded kind of that yes, the world is changing, childhood is changing. As
Mhm.
parents, our expectations are also growing at times, and we really need to cater to expectations of children as well. But, Professor, basis your experience while working with teachers in so many states in India, what is the ground reality? Would you like to share what teachers go through while maintaining this balance of child's need, parent expectation, and the whole system is changing? Everything is new for the teacher also. What do you think the kind of challenges that teachers or educators or childcare providers are facing, and some solutions that you see coming from the ground? I would really like to spend good amount of time on knowing that.
Thank you. Well, we need to understand that when we speak of ground realities, we also need to know that there are different realities out there, right? So, and the disclaimer is, I've not worked very closely with the private preschools. So a lot
Uh-huh.
of my experience comes from working with the public education system.
Uh-huh.
And having said that, there are some issues which are quite similar. One is with regard to the kind of unstructured way in which we have educators being developed for the early years, till very recently. Till, in fact, a few years ago, we did not even have a curriculum framework for early years. And only a few years ago did a national body come out with a curriculum framework. Not all states have also adopted it. But having said that, I think Ms. Sengupta in a keynote also spoke of the national education policy, and it's in that background probably we should discuss today, because it's very useful to locate this issue in that background. What the national education policy has very clearly done is highlighted the importance of early years education for the country. And having done that, they've gone on to say that teachers need to come out of a very robust teacher education system. And it has to be very well created and on a scientific basis, that you need to have these programs, and not just about a small little certification that could get the skills required to be with young learners. Because as so many of speakers from Asia in our own experience, and everyone later who's spoken have spoken about as to what is required to be done with the children is not anymore just a child's play, right? So how do you develop teachers to be able to engage with these young learners? So as again Sen Gupta was talking about, how you can't just be leaders, you can't just lead them on to something. I mean, we are going to we're already into the second third decade almost of the 21st century, and we know that it just can't be a program that we all have gone through earlier, and it has to be something which is very different. But then remember that the teachers are also still from the same old program. Aisha was talking about ICSE. We have the various state boards. Now, these are models or boards of examinations which have not evolved to the changing times, right? But then, yes, I mean, we do have boards to learn from, and IB is definitely one such board. So what the national education policy does is borrows a lot from all these various experiences around the world, including experiences such as the wonderful ones in our country, such as KLAY preschools, right? And if we are to get that kind of an environment going for all the 150 plus million children in the age group of 0 to 6 that we have, Of course, for our international audience, these numbers or figures may seem quite astonishing. So we have 160 million as per our 2011 census from 0 to 6, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
of these, we have almost 50% in a formal setup. And of course, a very small percentage in the private, but then large percentage in our government public education system, which we call as the Anganwadis. Now, how do we get educated teachers in there is again something that has to be thought through very deeply. And what the policy is proposing is that every individual who wishes to be a teacher makes the decision at the end of grade 12, as end of school, into a professional program for 4 years. So it's a 4 years integrated B.Ed program that is that is being proposed by the policy, and they're being pragmatic, and they're saying that this probably will not be possible overnight, but in the next 10 years, that is by 2030, in India, we need to have only this program out of which all our teachers come out, be it for the pre-primary or be it for grade 11, 12. Right? So all come out of these very intensive 4 year integrated program, and that would be the game changer. That is when probably we can expect all our preschools to be at the level that KLAY or others, which very few of us are fortunate to be able to send our children to. But we know that a large body of parents in our country cannot afford to be able to send the children to wherein children deserve to be. So that's the thing that one sees as hope. So I'm not really answering your question directly by saying what is the ground reality, but saying that there is a lot of hope given as to we are discussing this in the light of the new education policy.
No, but that's very important to think from all perspectives, because we are trying to connect the links over here, Professor, in terms of policy, parent expectations, and the ground realities of teacher. One thing, while I was listening to the mother in Asia or Parul's experience while working with thousands of mothers, is that, and I think I can take that liberty to send this message out to audience, because I'm both a parent as well as a teacher, that parents kindly respect the teacher of your child. That is the most important thing to go out as a part of this panel discussion. Until and unless the respect for the profession comes, it is very difficult to bring the right kind of educational changes in the country. So parents, my humble request, if you are listening to me, let's start from today. Let's take this baby step, respect the teacher of your child. Let's begin with this baby step and continue doing so. And teachers, I can tell you very well, please do not forget that parents are leaving their heart and soul in your hands. They are really blindly trusting you and leaving the most prized possession of their lives to you. So understand the responsibility. It's not only about qualification, like Professor highlight. We really need to think deeper about it in terms of respect for profession and the responsibilities that teachers should feel. They are building the nation, not only just a profession for them. So Parul, where do you think this fit in, this connection of parental expectations and teachers functioning? Uh, what is it that we can do to bring these two agencies together for the betterment of children?
At the end of the day, these are the two most important occupations. They're the most important stakeholders when we're talking about children. So they have to come together. And, Meghna, you just spoke about parents respect teachers and teachers, give that due consideration to parents. There has always been this, I don't know whether to use the word, but power hierarchy. There was a time when, when we were going to our PTMs, our parents wouldn't say much to the teachers were in control. These days it's a little the other way around, where parents have much to say and the teachers are always on the back foot trying to explain or defend themselves. I think both both situations are not healthy. And that power hierarchy has to turn into partnership. That's where it starts. At the end of the day, we're not going to be able to do very much. Parent communities like ours are very useful for bridging the gap, because we have both parties on board, and it's a wonderful place where we are able to share experiences, best practices, as long as it doesn't become a negative venting ground, which we've seen in a lot of micro communities like WhatsApp groups and all. It just becomes like a complaint board. So as long as we can keep the vibes positive and more productive, this partnership can actually work. The other thing that I feel is that parents, there is policy change that is required. I mean, Professor Rishikesh just mentioned a little bit about it, that at the end of the day, when we are talking about learning from boards like IB, it has to come from the policy level. At the end of the day, we are not going to be able to implement it ourselves at the school, parent or teacher level. So if we want to impact policy change at any level, parents and teachers have to work together. We have to be the lobbying, influencers to actually bring about that change. And how can we do that? We can only do that if we're aligned, right? If we're on the same page, if parents and teachers both believe in a certain value of education. I think first of all, that whole age-old toss-up of studying versus learning, what are we actually trying to achieve? If it's just studying, then fine, we carry on the way we have. But we know that at the end of the day, it's not going to be meaningful unless the end result is some amount of learning. So if we really want to create learners, I think we need to get rid of that top-down approach. It's not just, parents and teachers have to be partners. We have to look at kids as being partners with us in that whole process of education. We had done a survey very recently, and where we talked about it was data-based, the definitive guide to the new age digital mom, and where we talked about how the mom has turned into a learner. For most digital aspects, at least, her child is the gateway to, a new app, a new website, how to use her phone, how to delete history. Everything is actually being introduced to her by her child. So she's a learner and the child is the teacher. Let's just understand that, those roles are going to be switched at many levels. It's not just to do with technology. There'll be many other things where we'll find ourselves being learners, where even the teacher will find herself or himself being a learner. So I think at some level, parents and teachers, we need to get rid of those slightly hierarchical power struggles that we have, as I will teach and you will learn. And, we need to create some kind of a easier partnership where learning is the objective rather than, that top-down teaching. Like I said, at the end of the day, we need to also understand that, I know this has happened many times, that schools have said, okay, we're going to do only grading, and parents object and say, no, I need marks. How will I understand what is happening? Or the other way around, where the parents say, okay, let's get progressive, and the schools are resistant to change because, teachers have to be retrained and everything. So let's also understand that aspect, that, grades and marks and the kind of exams we have today were created at a certain stage, when those tools were the most effective. Today, they may not be the most effective, and they're not written in stone. It's not like, something which has been handed to us by God and said, ki, yahi karna hai, hum badal sakte hain. And why not? I think if we can become a little more progressive in the way we handle our systems, we should be able to help our children at the end of the day. That is what the objective is. So it's only when we can get onto the same page that we can actually influence policy and make it a little more future ready. What do we want? We want our children to be future ready, for this entire process of education, to actually make them ready for the kind of jobs which will exist or not exist tomorrow.
So, Fariha, my question is for you now. How do we bring this policy to practice? We have heard it from a parent perspective. We have heard it from many parents' perspective, in the sense that how do we contribute? And Professor clearly highlight that we really need to focus on the quality of teachers that are coming to teach and working with children. Apart from that, how do you think we can collaborate? And like the topic of the panel discussion is, we all are working apart, we all are working in different directions, but the goal is that the child should be benefited. Can you share some real experiences where we can bridge these links, and where is to contribute? What are the takeaways for the audience over here? How can they contribute in bringing these links together?
First of all, I would definitely like to say teachers are very important in a child's life. We all are pretty much aware of that thing. Child is in
True.
focus. I completely agree with Parul on that thing, that the focus is a child. For a parent, for me, my child is the most important thing. If I'm leaving my child somewhere, I expect best for that child. But the way I communicate with the teacher, that affects that thing.
Yes.
When a parent enters to a school, to a daycare or a preschool, they are actually entering in that teacher's workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So you parents need to give that respect to that teacher's workplace, basically, because parents would not like that any teacher, anybody would just work in their offices or somewhere and disrespect them or won't treat them in a nice way. It should be like vice versa. So parents should have that thing in their mind that they're entering somebody's workplace. Besides, they are leaving their child in their preschool or school. That should be the baseline, and there should not be any compromise, to be very honest. And management of school should support teachers on that. Management knows what teachers are doing, what kind of teachers you have recruited, and all that. Support your teachers. That is one thing that, being part of management, I support my teachers. They are the most important thing. I mean, people, without my teachers, I won't be able to run my place, you know.
So
And
true.
parents,
Yes.
if they are giving their children to you, to your schools, of course, they are trusting your management. They are trusting what you are showing to them. They need to trust teachers. They can't have daily argue with the teachers anyway. Coming back to the main point, in Sweden, we our curriculum is very concrete and very focused. It's not a very big book. It's couple of pages, yet very concrete. We have a big chapter in our curriculum that says how preschool and home work together, how parent and school collaborate together. It means that our focus is a child, how parents are collaborating. We invite our parents to join us for the circle time or for a lesson if they have time and they would wish to share their experience, whether they are working in a very thrilling, in a thrilling profession, or whether they have a boring job. It's okay to share what they do. We collaborate on all those levels because children learn from every individual who is standing, talking with them, interacting with them. Children, they do learn from everyone. If you have parents, we have parents coming from all over the world, so it means that they can share a lot of cultures, a lot of languages, stories from their cultures. We invite parents who are not from Sweden or from Sweden to come and share their stories with us, or they're anything that they're very proud of their country for. They should share. That is one of the things that really helps us bringing families together. And preschool and parents, they work very closely together. If we're having a project, we are for instance, we are just going to elderly home to sing for some elderlies. We ask parents if they would like to join us. This is like
Oh,
our community service.
so true, Fariha. And since you're talking about culture, no better person than Aisha here to highlight because she comes with a very rich understanding of one cultural dance form of India. And I'm sure as a mother, she must be taking good care of passing on the rich culture to her next generation. Aisha, would you like to talk a bit about the Indian values and the culture that you bring in your parenting, and how do you do that so that most of the parents who are listening can give the roots to children apart from giving them the wings?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I want to know because I lost my internet in the middle. That's
We
why
can
I
hear you very
disappeared.
well.
So sorry about that.
No worries.
Because
You are back
I'm not
and
able
we
to
can
hear
hear you.
you very clearly. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Uh, well, okay. So I mean, I think having a variety of culture and influence in our country is great. Whether it's from the US, UK, like she's from Sweden, wherever, it's great to imbibe all that into our children and help them learn a different variety as far as as far as culture, dance, and all that is concerned. I personally feel that there is suddenly, for the past couple of years, a lack of interest in our Indian culture and dance in our country. Whereas in West, there is a lot of importance given to all our Indian culture, dance, especially Indians living abroad. They are much more traditional in their values. They celebrate, I think, every festival with more zest. Their children are learning Bharatnatyam, Odissi, Kathak from a very young age. Whereas here in India, I see a lot of kids going and learning Zumba or jazz, which is great. I've also learned Russian ballet as a kid, but I have, because of my family background, yes, we couldn't escape dance. So I think I was 3 or 4 year old, I started learning Bharatnatyam and then automatically took interest towards Odissi dance profession. Um, I think it's very, very important for us as parents to make sure that we are, you know, taking the generations of what we have learned as far as our Indian culture is concerned ahead with our children, and don't let it die out. Because this is something that we need to be extremely proud about. It is our very own form of dance, music, art, mythology, which is very important to imbibe in our kids. And I see that lacking in a big way. So, in whatever way I can contribute, whether it's through my dance, teaching my children dance, I will be doing that. And I urge every Indian parent that you must teach your children about our Indian mythology, teach them Sanskrit shlokas, teach them the Hanuman Chalisa, the Gayatri Mantra, teach them all this, because this is what we have as Indians, and it's something that we need to treasure and be proud about, and we need this to go ahead generation after generation. We don't want it to die out. So I am urging all the parents to make sure that you teach some form of Indian dance to your children, art, culture. We need to keep the flag going, of our country. And that is just my humble request. And I would
So
want
true.
everyone to, make a point about this.
Thank you, Aisha, for highlighting that. And that's an important part of our discussion. Well, it needs another hour to discuss.
Like,
But
even
when
for
I'm
example,
connecting the
like so many kids don't say namaste these days. They just say hi, hello. But there is a lot of value and weight in saying namaste when you meet anyone. I think that's something that needs to be taught by us as parents.
So here we are, the parent herself who wants to give the right kind of values, right kind of approach to the child, and then there is a world exposure, the www dot playing its role, and the children are connecting to the world. And then we have our policy, which is still trying to bring the teachers who can understand this ever-changing expectation of parents and bringing everything together. But this is the present scenario. Professor, I would love to hear from you. What is it that you see for future when we are combining these dots? And this is my question to each one of you. Where do you see the future for us, not only in India, but globally? What is it that these links can be connected to with? And how do we proceed further to think that this is what the child needs and still keeping the expectations realistic?
uh, a very pertinent point that we've done some things in the past, and today we are at a point of time wherein we don't know what the future is going to be. So when we are at a stage of this kind, it is very important for us to really provide children the skill sets that they're going to use to be able to tackle that unknown future. So as you would also read in our policy, learning to learn is a very, very important skill set. And that's something that, one imbibes in the early years. And once you have that, then you are ready for any kind of future. And bringing in
Awesome.
what Faria was making, as a point in terms of how she sees children also as individuals with their own cultural background. Now, that's something that in India we see in every classroom. But then, how much of that do we enjoy? How much of that do we promote? Rather, we try and standardize, and we don't encourage them to speak in their languages, the stories that they bring. Connecting again the dot that Aisha was making with regard to our own cultural history. So all these need to come into the classroom. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the kind of society that we want for tomorrow? And that's what we need to have in the classroom.
Oh, so many lessons to learn from each one of you. Time is not allowing us to continue, but a quick wrap up. What do you think, Parul, we should take care when we are thinking of future for children? How should we change ourselves as parents?
You know, I love the point that Professor Rishikesh just made of how we tend to homogenize children. You know, we're not celebrating their differences, we're not celebrating their cultural diversities. Even when we're maybe, okay, allowing them to speak in their languages, the languages that we, Indian languages, the way we teach them in school is so boring. I'm sorry to use that word. You know, why are children protesting against Hindi so much? Because you stuff them with difficult chapters, poems right from day one. You give them grammatical exercises. You take that joy away from the conversation of, you know, any language in Hindi. So we need to realign ourselves again, parents, teachers, the important stakeholders. The other point that I'd really like to make is about technology. You know, we know that technology is going to be advancing and we know very little about it. 2020, the year, has been a good indication of how unpredictable things are. So jobs that exist today will not exist tomorrow, and vice versa. So what are we preparing our children for? That is what we need to keep in mind. Are we preparing them for a certain job? Are we preparing them for life? If we
So
choose
true.
to prepare them for life, we'd better empower them with some skills. They need to learn how to learn rather than, you know, be stuffed with redundant knowledge. They'll be able to calculate on a calculator, but if you don't tell them where that calculation is going to be applied, it's really of no use, and they can apply it in 10, 15 different ways. So that whole
True.
critical
The
thinking.
capability of education is very crucial, and
Absolutely.
be it policy or being teachers, we need to focus that. Asha, the last point from you, the parting note, any significant thing. I thoroughly enjoyed your presence on this summit, and I thoroughly enjoyed seeing the real Isha today, the mother in you. So, would you like to share any parting note before we say goodbye to you about this discussion, what the future holds?
Well, what the future holds is something that we all need to join together and make an effort in making sure that we as parents and as the teachers want is what is going to be happening for the children. Definitely, we want a safer place for our kids to be in. Um, like the other panelist also mentioned, it's not we don't know what the future holds at the moment. It's very unpredictable, seeing the way things have turned out this year. But of course, there is hope, and I'm sure with the effort of all the right individuals put together, we will see a better tomorrow. And on the other hand, like I said, being a new mother for me has been really exciting so far, and it's going to be extremely adventurous. But I like to thank you for the teachers like you all who are helping us parents be better parents with our children, because it's through teachers also that we learn so much. I am currently doing online classes with my daughter, and I'm spending 2 hours with her and the teachers, and it's just amazing seeing how the relationship and the bond that has been developed between the child and the teacher as well. And me being a mother, being present there, it's very important for all of us to be in it together, I feel. um,
Thank you so much,
and
Asha,
thank
for
you so
highlighting
much
that.
for having me here. Thank you, Himanshu Garg. And was lovely talking to all of you all. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Asha, and thanks to each and every panelist over here. My humble request to each one of you: stay connected. Let's keep doing our bit, and just wrap up our conversation. I think it is okay if we work in our places wherever we are, but let's not. Work in silos. Let's stay connected, understand each other better. Parents need to understand teachers, and teachers need to understand parents, and policy needs to support this association to allow children to grow in a more positive world. Thank you so much, everybody. Any
Thank
significant
you.
parting note from any one of you? Please go ahead. But thank you so much for coming over here from different parts of world,
Thank you.
different parts of country.
Thank you.
Honor to share this platform with each one of you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
the invite. Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
What a wonderful discussion happening, listening from a mother's perspective, listening from a person who has worked with thousands of teachers, a great perspective coming up from each one of you. And we really cannot close this evening since beginning of the summit. We are talking about adjacency. We are talking about bringing everything together and working in our own directions, working with our own platforms. But we really need to focus and bring the concept of future and developing creative thinkers. So thank you so much, everybody. And we would like to move on to our next session, which is more or less developing the creative thinkers, because creative thinkers are the future of world. We really need to invest in our children to keep growing, to keep allowing them to develop and keep investing in themselves. So, all the professionals and parents over here, we really need to think of children and their brain and their needs. We are talking about giving them the right kind of exposure, but let's think it from a child's perspective as well. What is it that the child can offer? We have heard a parent perspective, we have heard from management perspective, we have heard from the policy perspective, but this whole chain remains incomplete until and unless we really focus on developing creative thinkers. And I take immense delight in telling you that the expert of that particular philosophy is present among us. Dr. Rebecca Isbell is a motivational speaker, prolific writer, and consultant in early childhood education, and author of 13 books and numerous articles. Her most recent book and a bestseller from NACI, National Association for Education of Young Children. She has written a wonderful book on developing creative thinkers. Her workshops are known for a lot of learnings. I personally thoroughly enjoyed Dr. Rebecca's sessions multiple times, and I feel honored to share this platform with you, Dr. Rebecca. A very warm welcome and thanks a ton for joining straight from USA in wee hours of the day. I totally appreciate that, and that talks literally a lot about your commitment in this field. That straight from USA, you agreed to join us in wee hours of the day and right here with all your energy to share your knowledge nuggets. To all the participants, I would like to say Professor is making it more or less a workshop also, because she's sharing a couple of slides and couple of messages. Take notes, learn a lot, because this learning will not come back to you again. Professor, over to you, and please do share in-depth knowledge of yours in coming few minutes.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Rebecca Isbell, and I'm so pleased to be a part of your international conference today. Together, we are going to unite to provide young children with wonderful opportunities and amazing experiences that will help them become creative thinkers. Together, we can make that happen all over the world. So today, I want us to investigate some of the ways that we can establish an environment that we can interact and work with young children during their critical time of development, so that they will be ready for a future that we have never seen. The young children in your classroom today are in your home, will be living and working in a very different world. They will be living and establishing families in 2040, 2050, 2060. And what will the world be like for them? It will be a very different place. We're already having a touch of what the 21st century is going to be like. We're going to have issues and problems that we've never dealt with before. And our children will be the people who will be responding to these problems and issues. And how we deal with them today is going to determine how good they are at problem solving, how good they are at inventing and creating new things in their world. So why is there so much change in our world? Well, first of all, we're communicating with people around the world. Our session this morning is a great example of that. I live in the middle of the United States, and you are in India, a world apart. Yet we are talking together, we're thinking together, and we're deciding what is good for young children. We have an expanding amount of new information. Every day, thousands of new pieces of information come into existence. And we have to be able to change and adjust and learn from these new pieces of information. We also know that our environment is changing, and we must be able to adapt and learn how to deal with those changes. And then there will be challenges that you and I today don't even know exist. They will come into existence for our children to solve, for our children to answer. I thought it might be fun for us to kind of look at a few things that are going to be in your child's future. And some of these are already being tested today. How about a private airplane? One that you can drive out your driveway and drive to work, commute to your place. How about looking at the tip of your finger? A chip as small as the tip of your finger will be able to hold every book that has ever been written. Futuristic scientists have told us these things are in development and will be available for our children as they grow up. Researchers and people who study future business opportunities predict that in the next 12 years, and that's for our children, there will be more than 200 new professions. Professions we've not even heard of today. How do you prepare a child for a profession that we don't even know exists yet? What skills and possibilities will they need to be able to make it in a new world with a new profession? So why is creativity important in today's world? With all these changes that are occurring, all these improvements and potential issues and problems are happening, it is essential that the children that we are working with today learn how to communicate in a variety of different ways. They need to learn how to collaborate with other people and people who are different from them, who may have ideas different from them. They need to develop creative confidence. So when they are posed with a problem or an issue that they've never dealt with before, they will have confidence that they can solve it, that they know how to deal with it. And a part of taking those creative ideas is that we have to understand and help children understand as well that when you take creative risk, when you try new things, sometimes you make mistakes, and mistakes are okay. Mistakes can be a part of the learning process. If it didn't work, what can we do different? We don't give up. We try another way, and we accept that sometimes it doesn't work. One of the people that I have been interested in studying is E. Paul Torrance, and I was fascinated by his work because he, like me, have been interested in young children specifically. And he studied young children between the ages of 4 and 8. And he developed Torrance's test for creativity, which is not a standardized test, but rather a test of figures and designs and completions. And he found that he believed that the most creative people in the age groups that he was working with was the 4 and 5-year-old child. When he asked them, do you have good ideas? Are you creative? Can you solve this problem? Over 90% of them said, yes, I can. By the time they ended the middle school, the elementary school, at the end of that period of time, when those same questions were asked to these children, the same children, only 32% believed that they were creative and had good ideas and could solve problems. And by the end of high school, only 10% had that positive view of their thinking and their creative problem solving. Now, what does this say to you and I, as early childhood educators, as parents of young children, as leaders in the community? This early year period is the time when we must focus on developing creative thinking and helping children build their confidence in their capabilities. At the time when we actually need the most creativity in the world, a rather shocking thing is happening. We are seeing a decline in the creativity of children. This is something to alarm us, because Torrance found them to be so creative, and when Kim did her research using the same test, she found there was a decline, particularly in 5 and 6-year-olds. Now, why do you think there is a decline in creativity today? Well, there's many reasons and many possibilities, and I'm just going to mention a few, and you can think about your own situation, your own classrooms, your own schools, your own homes. But there is such a focus on test taking, standardized testing, where you must get the right answer. Creativity is not finding the right answer. It's finding many answers and choosing the one that works best. We're increasing the standards, which means we're doing more memorization and rote memory kinds of things that will be evaluated on standards and tests. Divergent ideas are not valued. Saying something different or unique or coming up with a different idea is not valued. And we're seeing less time for the arts, the visual arts, music, and movement. Now, I want to hastily say that art is not the only place where you will have creativity. Creativity can happen everywhere. But for some children, the visual arts and music and movement are the place where they excel, and it becomes the area where they can be the most creative. There's less opportunity for play. Less play, more sitting in your seat, repeat after me. Because we're concerned about making test scores that are higher. And what we are also seeing in the United States in young children is an increase in stress and anxiety about school. When I first began working in early childhood, we had stress and anxiety at 4th grade, where children began to not want to go to school. They didn't enjoy the process. Today, we are seeing it in our kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms. What are we doing wrong? How are we taking the joy of learning away from young children at such an early age? Kim, who followed up Torrance's research, compared her scores on the test of creativity with her children today with Torrance's in 1998. And what she found is that children today are less expressive, less talkative, and less imaginative. But the most significant decrease that we should be concerned about today was found in kindergarten, where the biggest decline in creative thinking was occurring in 5 to 6-year-old children. Young children were generating fewer and fewer unique ideas. The Committee for the 21st Century in the United States said, okay, the world is going to be different for our young children, and some of the things that we're teaching and some of the ways we're teaching our classrooms may not be the best way to get our children ready for this very different world. And so this committee, made up of educators, leaders, political people, scientists, others who knew about the future, they came up with what we can remember very easily, the 4 C's. And if you look at this graph, you'll see at the very center of the graph is creativity. Creativity touches everything. And then the other 3 are, and we're going to talk about these as we move through our time, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. And in early childhood, we often refer to this as problem solving. We'd like to add another C, creative confidence. Being willing to try something new, to be persistent on a task, being willing to make mistakes, and taking risk. After all, this is what innovators and inventors and creators do. So who has the potential to be creative thinkers in the 21st century? Young children. And we are working with them when they are primed to be able to be creative thinkers if we set them free and provide an environment that nurtures their thinking processes. Now, the characteristics of creative children are not always positive. Sometimes they're uninhibited. They're filled with ideas, and sometimes they have trouble finding out which one they want to use. They want to do it their way, and they're unconcerned about what others think. A note here. When we look at inventors, creators, musicians, and artists, they have these same characteristics that we see in young children. They are confident in their ability, and they want to do it their own way. So you and I today have a challenge. How do we support and nurture young children to be creative? How do we do this? Leaders in the community can support the programs than teachers who are striving to develop creative thinking instead of test scores. They can collaborate with others to find ways to have new possibilities within their curriculum. They communicate actively with their communities and value creative problem solving. But creative thinkers need time to play. They play with ideas. They play with materials. They play with peers. And they play with possibilities. We also want them to be able to communicate, because if you have a good idea and you want to implement it, you have to be able to communicate that idea to other people. Maybe other people who don't have the same vision or don't have the same ideas. And again, in early childhood, we are in the midst of language development. This is where the brain is ready to learn language. It is ready to communicate. Just look at from 2 years to 5 years of age. A child may have 1 or 2 words is a 2-year-old, but by the time they're 5, they have thousands of words. If they have the opportunity to communicate and use their language and have experiences that include vocabulary. Here's just an example of a child being creative in what he says about it. The teacher has put out a water table outside. She's put water things, toys inside of the water table. And this little boy is experimenting with them, and he finds a medicine dropper. And he is intrigued. As you know, young children are so curious about what a medicine dropper does. And so he experiments with it, and he blows water, and he mashes, and he watches it. And then he says, I can make the water go up. He has found something he did not know before because he was able to experiment with the materials that were there. The teacher had added something that was unique and interesting for him, and he communicated that the water went up. All day long, they're inventing language. If you don't have a word, you just invent one. This is an interaction between 2 little girls in home living. And one said, did you ever notice our legs need clothes? Have you ever noticed that? And the other one responds, I like your pink one, as she looks at the other little girl, wrapping it around her leg. And Angie said, it's called a leg scarf. A new word to fit the occasion that was stimulated and encouraged because she was involved in play and she was communicating with another child. We need collaborators. Gone is the day when one person sits in a little cubicle and invents something. Actually, teams of people today are creating and collaborating. Do our children have the skills to be able to work with other people? Can they talk with them? Can they share their ideas? This is a restaurant center where the children decided that it would be a Mexican restaurant, and they decided what roles they had. They made their own menus. They decided what music they were going to play. And the little girl with the pad is the waiter, and she's taking the order. And she said, what would you like to order, ma'am? And so the conversation, the communication, the collaboration is going on by playing in this restaurant center, where they are able to talk and adjust and children be in control of the play. This is where a little girl spills some sand on the floor. And being a teacher that develops responsibility in children, they know that they should clean it up if they made the mess. And the teacher has a small brush and a little pan that's just the appropriate size for young children. And so she begins to sweep it up. She is independently responsible. And as she's doing this, some of her friends see her and they like what she's doing. Then they decide they can help. And so there is a collaboration between the 3 of them on how to clean up the sand that has fallen in the floor. The problem is, how do you get the sand up? Small groups are especially important for young children because in a small group, you have more chances to talk, you have more chances to collaborate, you have more ways to influence play, and you have opportunities to do peer tutoring. We all know that one of the ways you learn best how to communicate is when you teach someone else how to do it. So think about ways that you can have these small groups in your classroom. Creative thinkers. This is a slide of a little boy who was making masks in his classroom. His teacher said it's time for lunch. He was cutting out tiny, tiny little pieces and gluing them on this construction paper and making a mask. And the teacher said, it's time for lunch. And this little boy put his little hands to his head and he said, I can't stop now. My brain is too full of ideas. How many children in your classroom today, in your home, are so full of ideas? They need to express them. They need to talk about them. They need to have the opportunities to play with the ideas. A creative teacher or parent equals creative children. So that means that you as a parent and as a teacher need to develop your own creativity. We need to be more willing to try new things. We need to be able to demonstrate to children that we thought about this another way. And when you make a mistake, it's important to say to a child, boy, I messed up. Because they need to learn that a creative person has lots of ideas and sometimes they mess up. So teachers, we need to recognize that the young children in our classroom are creative and that we can nurture that creativity. We need to design an environment that inspires their curiosity. We need materials that are open-ended and have many possibilities. And when a child comes up with a unique idea, we value it and we say, what a good idea that was. You know, I've never thought of that. As parents, you know that your children are capable and we want to follow their interest so that we know what they're curious about. We don't want to tell them what to think. We want to see what they're interested and follow that curiosity. We want to read to them and interact with them, not just read a story, but ask questions. Did you like the way the story ends? Would you do it another way? What other possibilities are there? And play with your child. Let them lead you in their play. Let you follow their lead. Are we interested in the product? No, little children are interested in the process. They're not worried about it. How can we support their ideas? We make good comments. Tell me about your plan. Keep going. You're right on track. What are you going to do next? If you could change one thing, what would you change? Our questions and ideas posed to them will help them think in new ways, providing them choices. What do you want to do? What materials do you want to use? What books do you want to read? What songs do you want to read? Encouraging them to come to self-evaluation. Not what I think of your picture, but what do you think of your picture? Open-ended materials have many possibilities and combinations. We must take time to communicate and collaborate with the children about their ideas. This little girl was interested in the boxes in the art area, and she made a video camera and a remote. No one told her what to make. She created this idea. It came from her own head. This teacher put out a collection of all kinds of balls and just put them in a basket and let the children explore it. Now, being an early childhood person, I would say, well, they're going to sort it by color. They're going to color it by size. Boy, I'm glad I didn't guess that, because what they decided was they were going to sort it by smell. I don't know about you, but I would have never thought of sorting the balls by smell. That was a creative idea that came from the children, displaying their efforts, designing an environment that will encourage the use of novel materials, a place to display their creations, a beautiful environment that says the world is a beautiful place and here's the places we keep it. A place for thinking and reflecting, a quiet place. Unique materials that the children have never used before will force them to think creatively. This is a music wall where the teacher hung household items on the screen, on the fence. And this little boy had a variety of mallets that he could choose from. And he was hitting on each one of these. And his communication says, this one sounds louder than the other. Different kinds of blocks create different kinds of constructions. This little boy says, I have a lot of tall and pointed buildings. The reason he has that is because the teacher had in her collection of blocks some very unique and unusual things. So today we have a big challenge. What is our challenge today, and how are we going to meet it? In our classrooms, we have young, creative children just waiting to be set free, for their ideas to be stimulated and encouraged. But it is up to us to create the environment and the interactions and the possibilities that will nurture their thinking. So what is our goal today for our children who are going to be living in the 21st century? We want to nurture young, creative thinkers. We want them to be able to communicate their ideas and feelings and thoughts. We want them to be able to collaborate with others and to be able to solve difficult problems. You and I must unite to nurture these young, creative thinkers to reach their potential and their possibilities for the future, so that our world will be a greater place for them as they move into their lives. You have the power to do this. If you're interested in learning more about what I've talked about today, I'd invite you to go to my website, drisbell.com, DRISBELL.com. And on that website, you will find some free resources that I've collected for you. And you will also have some tips for parents. And I think you'll find these very interesting. If you're interested in getting a copy of my ebook, which has just been released in ebook form, there is also a page there that will tell you the steps and procedures you go through to get your very own copy of Nurturing Creativity, the Essential Mindset for Young Children's Learning. Thank you. Can't hear her.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isabel, for your wonderful session. We thoroughly enjoyed listening to you, especially the 4 C's that you were talking about is something of high significance for us to take note of as educators and parents while working with children. And we are actually getting a lot of questions from audience for you. So I will not take much time between you and audience, and will share these questions for you. The very first and very interesting question, in fact, I would love to know that as well. And this is coming from many of the people who are working on ground with many teachers, and they feel that it is a great idea to build creative thinkers among our children, but the challenge is, how do you bring creativity to adults? We have seen the world, we have seen how the world functions, and we have our own thoughts and roots. How do we break those barriers and become more creative as adults who are working with children on ground? Would you like to share some thoughts on that?
Well, I think that early childhood teachers in general are creative people. Sometimes they don't believe that. When I say, "Are you creative?" "Oh, no, I'm not creative." But they really are. Every day they're creative, but they don't recognize that in themselves. And so, first of all, I think they have to realize that they are creative and they have good ideas and they have possibilities that they can add in the classroom that will make it interesting. The other part of that is that each day you can interweave creative thinking and creative problem solving and communication and collaboration into your regular day, all during the day. When you're getting ready to go to lunch, you can pose a question to them. "What do you think we're going to have for lunch today?" And let them tell you the different possibilities. And somebody will surely come up with something really wild and off the wall. And when they do, you say, "Oh, that's a really fun idea. I hadn't thought of that." So I think that first of all, we need to understand it doesn't have to be a separate curriculum. It can be interwoven into what we're doing all day long. And we as a teacher has to first of all value it, or we're not going to integrate it into the classroom. We have to know that this is a 21st century life skill. If you're going to survive and make it in the 21st century, you're going to need to be a creative thinker. And so if you understand that, then you will put more value into it and you will notice and integrate more of that into your classroom all through the day. You'll give them more choices. It's a really important one. Instead of me just always saying, "This is what we're going to do," I might say, during circle time today, we have these 3 books that we can read.
Wow, yes.
Which book would you like to hear? And it gives them an opportunity to have some control over that and to have a voice. Now, do they all agree? No. But part of learning about that is collaboration. Well, maybe we can't read this one today. A lot of people wanted to. Maybe tomorrow we'll read that. You see, we learn how to collaborate, how to work together. So I think part of it is just taking small steps at the beginning, putting in the art area material you've never put in there before, something you've never thought about being in the art area before. You put it there and you stand back and you watch what the children are doing. What I find so many times over and over is what wonderful ideas they come up with when we follow their lead instead of telling them what to do. And
That's true.
It's a very important thing. I heard a statement, and I really like this. I try to think about this as in relationship to young children. We want them to learn to be creative thinkers, but we don't want to tell them what to think.
Yes. Very important message coming from there.
Very important for all of us to think, because we're teachers. We got to give you knowledge. We got to tell you what to do, you know.
Yes, and in the humdrum of life, when we are working with children, unfortunately, we end up telling them what to think.
Yes.
This is a very huge challenge posed on adults, even though they don't want to. We end up doing that, but the caution coming here is that that will not lead to creative thinkers, and this is what we need to be watchful for.
The only person that will get better as a thinker is the teacher who came up with the idea, not the children.
So true. That's coming from your rich experience.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Isabel, I think this is coming from a parent, but I would like to take this tough question for both of us. How do I prepare my child for skills that I don't even know exist in the next 20 years? The parents are asking about, I'm clueless of future. And in fact, we were talking about, same in panel discussion, that we hear from parents, we hear from teachers, we bring the policy in the right place. Also, India is doing that attempt right now. But amidst all this, it is a huge challenge because future is unknown. So, can you give us some guidance, basis your rich experience? What is it that needs to be done today so that our children are prepared for future?
Well, I have a one-page handout that lists all the things that parents can do in the home on my website, and they can go in there and just copy that. But just in general, let me just make a few comments. One of the first things that I think we need to do as parents is to talk with our children in interactive conversations. If I pose a question, I listen to the answer, and then I respond. As parents, we're not so good at waiting till they answer. We're jumping in and giving them the answer. What I want them to do is them come up with the answer. I want them to think about what it might be. And if I always jump in and give them the answer, I said some of the research that said teachers give children 5 seconds to answer a question. Well, I don't know about you, but if I ask you what you had for breakfast this morning, could you answer that in 5 seconds?
Oh, I should, because my husband made it for me. So I should not take more than 5 seconds.
We don't give children long enough to think about things. So we need to have times when we'd have an interactive conversation, when they see something new that they've never seen before and they're so curious about it. Then we use that moment. How do we find out more about this? What more can we do? You see, I'm teaching them problem-solving skills. When a problem comes up and something doesn't work, well, I don't know why it's not working. Can we figure out why this is not working? And then we brainstorm lots of possibilities, and we may even try several. So conversation and talking, not at children, but with children, is critical for parents. Part of it is also giving them opportunities to play. We think we have to stuff children full of academic information. That's not going to work for the 21st century. Lots of those things that we're going to teach, memorize, rote, repeat after me, is going to be wrong in 20 years. Wrong. How many planets are there going to be?
Yeah.
You see, it's going to be wrong. So instead of spending our time getting them to do memorizations and rote memory of things, what we want them to do is to be involved in the problem solving, the creating, and we follow their lead. Because when we let the child lead us in play, they have a sense of power. They know they can do it. And they're involved with it, but you're not telling them what to do. But you're there as an interactive person, answering their questions when they have them. And if they need to be left alone, left alone.
That's very important to take note of. And those parents who are listening to me, basis my interactions with thousands of parents at KLAY preschool and daycare, I can for sure share that let's not aim to develop a capacity of children to think futuristic, but currently your job is to provide them the real life lessons.
Yes.
Problem solving through real life is the key to go. Develop the strength in them, develop the self-esteem in them. Focus on these areas today. Trust me, it is very easy to pass an exam on paper, but to pass the exam of life, parents, invest today. Develop individuals.
Children have such wonderful potential and so marvelous ideas and language if we just listen to it and move from that to what they're interested in. I think we have to value the child's thinking more.
That's so true. That's so true. I won't spend much time on one question because we are bombarded with questions, doctor. So let me read the next one for you. This is coming from most of your readers of your book. They have read your book extensively. Right. And they are asking about, in your book, you talk about letting children take risk. But how do we balance as adults between ensuring the risk opportunities and the safety of children?
When I say take risk, I don't mean jumping off of the bridge. Okay.
Yes.
I mean taking small risk. Instead of using the blue color that everybody else is using, I'm going to use red. That's a
Okay.
risk. It's a risk that my teacher might not like it. It might not work. Other people might ridicule it. It's a risk.
Mhm.
But when they do that, you say, wow, you chose red. What a unique idea. I'm so glad you chose something different. What do you think about the color red? You see? So I'm not suggesting in any way that we take crazy risk. We are the adult in the situation here. And we certainly provide an environment that should be free of dangerous risk. That's part of our responsibility. I write a lot about environments. We have to create an environment that's not filled with unsafe things. And once we create that environment, then we should be able to let children be free to choose and do things in our own way. What if I want to build a brick building out of blocks that's taller than me? Is that okay?
Very great insight coming from there. But now let's listen to from a heart of a teacher also, Dr. Isabel. We have
Okay.
taken a couple of questions from parents and something very dear to my heart also. This set of teachers are asking a very simple and straight question that they are trying to incorporate 4Cs in their courses and curriculum. But as a system, it is not highly accepted because of the outdated programs, because of the strict guidelines given to them. Can you share some midway for them? Can you share a path where they can start working at least and bring changes in their functioning with children?
Well, most of our curriculum for young children now in the United States mentions creative thinking. Specifically, that we need to be developing creative thinking. They don't tell us how to do it, but they say we should be doing that. So I think that part of it is changing the curriculum so that it matches what we know to be the 21st century skills. And that certainly comes from the teachers, but also from leaders and community leaders. That we want our children not to be stuck in the way things were, but to be developing things that are going to be useful for them in the future. Now, while they have that very structured, sometimes curriculum, what you have to do then is figure out how you can weave into that an opportunity to have problem solving, an opportunity to have a creative question, a provocation that will make you think about it in a different way. So you have to be creative of how you integrate it into your curriculum, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to think about how, if I'm doing literacy things, how can I interweave in the literacy activities something that's going to ask them, communication is perfect. How do you communicate that? How do you tell somebody what you've done? So that's a perfect one that you can see just very easily how you can integrate it. But I think it's harder when you have a structured curriculum that doesn't give you much leeway. But one of the things that we have to do is to push for change that will understand that no longer can we educate children the way that we were educated. It's not going to work.
I would add on to what you just said, and because this whole summit is actually a tribute to teachers. We started it last year on Teachers' Day. September 5th is celebrated as Teachers' Day in India, Dr. Isabel, and all the audience from Globe who is listening to us. We every year celebrate with a lot of energy because this is a tribute to them. So teachers, my humble request, I would request you to keep reminding yourself your powers. Don't think that curriculum is the guiding force. You are the guiding force, ladies. You are the queens of your classroom, and your children are in awe of you. They are literally in awe of you. You are the real heroes who are shaping the whole world for tomorrow. So do not underestimate the power in your hand and the power in your conversations with children. And as Dr. Isabel said, you need not to have a curriculum to bring creativity. It has to flow naturally through your provocative questions, through your inquiry based learning, enhance the inquisitive nature of children. And one simple tip for that, which I read in Dr. Isabel's book only, the answer of a question should be a question. So, why the sky is blue? Hey, buddy, what do you think why it is blue?
Yes, yes.
So, this
And
is something.
we have to be also open if they say something that seems to us like totally incorrect, off the wall. What we have to
Exactly.
say is, oh, that's another way of thinking about that. I hadn't thought about it in that way. You
In
see, it's not
fact, I should share
saying,
this with
yeah,
you that when I asked this question in a kindergarten classroom, when I was a kindergarten teacher years back, one of the boys said, you know, because blue is my favorite, and God asked me, which color you want in the sky? So it's blue. I still remember that boy.
oh,
That
that's a
boy is
lovely
still very
story.
close to my
Yeah,
heart.
it's a
So,
great story. Well, I have spent my life being an early childhood educator and then working with early childhood educators. I think that as a profession, people are really underrated because it is the most critical time of children's development. And what we do during those early years are going to impact that child for the rest of their lives. So early childhood teachers can impact the future by what they are doing in the classroom today with their young children.
so true. I can keep on asking questions from you. I would love to keep listening to you for hours and take your little knowledge and pass on to as many people as possible. Take even a piece of your knowledge is so much for me. But I would really have to stop our conversation here because time is not permitting us to continue. Dr. Isabel, in my own Indian way, thank you so very much to you. I can't thank you enough for joining us straight from USA, miles and miles apart, but we are together in this mission for this beautiful cause of working for children and staying devoted and following their lead. So much to take away from you, Dr. Isabel. Time is not allowing us to continue. Thank you so very much on behalf of audience members also. I would like to convey my sincere, heartfelt thanks to you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so very much. Audience, we did not even realize, but we have come to the end of the summit. The past few hours were so rich in learning, so much to absorb. When I started, as I said, this is a little attempt. It is literally a drop in an ocean as an attempt. But by the end of the summit, I should say, we actually got an ocean in the drop, an ocean of learning, an ocean of knowledge, an ocean of thoughts that it is so important to bring these different bodies together parents, teachers, educators, providers, policymakers and keep these discussions going on. It's a very small attempt at our part, very humble attempt, but our goal is to spark the conversations for change. And my friends, we really, really cannot continue this discussion until and unless each and every stakeholder contributes significantly. And I would actually request every single educator and teacher who is listening to me to keep doing the great work. Please understand the power in your hands. This summit is a tribute to you. Happy Teachers Day to each and every teacher out there who is really, really working hard to build this world beautifully. And thank you so much to each and every speaker and panelist to join us and contribute significantly with the knowledge nuggets that you have shared with us. We will for sure carry the knowledge when we work on ground with children. This is a promise to each and every speaker and panelist. On behalf of audience, I would like to say that. Friends, I cannot close this summit without telling you a very simple but very strong thing. This summit is a labor of love. Hundreds of hands, hundreds of hearts have worked behind the scene. I know all of you are listening to me right now, so stop doing whatever you are doing behind the scenes, and I will take the other side of the table. On behalf of every single member of audience, I would like to appreciate all the people who have worked for days, weeks, months behind the scene. A sincere token of appreciation. I always say appreciation, when said, is courteous, when enacted, is impressive and noble, but when it is felt within, it is heavenly. And I'm having that heavenly feeling for you right now. So every single hand, heart, soul worked behind the summit to make it so successful with no technical glitches, no challenges. Audience must be benefited with the knowledge bank. A big thank you, a lot of appreciation on behalf of audience. I can take the liberty of saying that to you. But audience dear, I would say this is not the end of the evening for all of us. It's actually a beginning of a new era. We need to invest in ourselves for our own growth, to prepare us for the future, and also prepare children for the future. We cannot leave this summit without taking a pledge to stay committed, a pledge to stay devoted, and a pledge to follow the leads of children. Stay tuned, dear friends, for the next edition of ISEY International Summit on Early Years 2021 is waiting. I promise we'll start working for that very soon and keep you posted. Stay tuned for 2021. Many, many thanks for joining us today. And what a wonderful line of discussion that we had. I'm sure you all had your takeaways. Please do share your takeaways on all the social media handles at KLAY Preschools and Daycare. On behalf of the school, I really would like to extend a heartfelt thank for your participation. Stay tuned, but let's all join together for taking this pledge, the pledge of commitment and the pledge to follow the leads of children.
I pledge to protect children from my anxieties and their own.
I pledge to tell them the truth, however difficult it may be.
I pledge to acknowledge their curiosity, even if I cannot nourish it.
I pledge never compare them to their peers.
I pledge to never try to fulfill my dreams through them.
I pledge to prioritize their happiness over achievements.
I pledge to trust every child's capacity.
And so I pledge to follow their lead.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world. Lay the puzzle pieces out. Find out what it's all about. Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Sail past where it's been charted. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. With our hands and with our hearts, we can and dare to make a start. Together we can change the world. What if we spoke with one voice, knowing that we have a choice? Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Still past where it's been started. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. Change your mind and change your life. Set aside the fear and strife. Together we can change the world. When we open up our eyes and we start to realize, together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Still past where it's been started. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Still past where it's been started. Roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world.